Chapter 1338. Xiameng stood in space and looked at Astral 10. The once incomparably large battleship that had shone brightly in history had now been reduced to an academy. Xia Juyo entered Astral 10 while Xiameng stood guard outside. In Astral 10 there were already people who had their eyes on Xia Juyo. Xia Juyo did not greet any of the instructors after entering Astral 10. Instead he asked a student to look for Xia Luo. Instructor Xia Luo? It's not easy to find him. He's a first-year legendary student and not an actual instructor. He'll only teach you if he meets you. Usually he won't stay at a fixed location, the student replied. Xia Juyo smiled. Then do you know where he usually stays? I'm Xia Luo's brother. The student thought for a moment. Maybe in the ruins. Instructor Xia Luo has been going there often in the past half a month. I don't know what he's looking for. Xia He thanked the student and looked in the direction of the ruins. Ruins? That's even better. No one will disturb me. He walked over. Astral 10 had been destroyed by the crazy headmaster, and the ruins were part of the deck. Every protruding plank was like a mountain ridge that was eternally burning and giving off a burnt smell. Xia Juyo walked through the ruins step by step. Occasionally, students would appear around him and he would follow them in a certain direction. A day later the flames grew larger and larger until there was a sea of fire everywhere. To the students of Astral 10 this place was too deep into the ruins and was very dangerous. They could not withstand the high temperatures of the flames either. Xia Juyo raised his hand, and his star energy dissipated in all directions. His eyes then lit up as he looked to his left. He could feel star energy fluctuations there. Not long after, a figure flitted past the flames. Xia Juyo looked over and was overjoyed. It was Xia Luo. Xia Luo's expression changed when he saw Xia Juyo. Why are you in Astral 10? Xia Juyo's lips curled up and his gaze turned fierce. You've been looking for me. Let's see who can help you this time. Xia Luo did not say anything and immediately fled. Xia Juyo raised his hand and sent out a palm. The nether-refined palm traversed the sea of fire and froze a large area. His innate gift of echo caused a second palm imprint to appear in front of Xia Luo. Xia Luo quickly dodged. You won't be able to escape, Xia Luo. Fusing with me is your destiny. You were originally a part of me in the first place. Xia Juyo shouted, and the star energy in his hand transformed into a blade. He then raised his hand and unleashed 3-blade intents. During the Sovereign Tournament, Ancestor Chen's use of the 3 styles of saber wills gave Xia Juyo even more inspiration. He actually managed to restrain his saber wills. Although its power did not increase, it was no longer a one-time release. The closer he got to Xia Luo, the deeper his saber intent became. Xia Luo felt a fatal crisis. Xia Juyo's refined netherworld palm appeared before his eyes once again. He hurriedly raised his hand and unlocked step by step to dissolve the refined netherworld palm. However, behind him a blade descended. The blade swept past Xia Luo and landed on the ground. Terrifying shockwaves tore through the sea of flames. In the distance, a group of more than 10 students cautiously walked along the edge of the sea of fire. They used all kinds of external objects to defend against the sea of fire as they explored the ruins. All of the students who joined Astral 10 wanted to explore the ruins and search for ancient texts. They were the ones who had gone the furthest, and that included the girl called Zhou Xian. Will we be burned to death? Even the mentors said it's very dangerous. Zhou Xian was afraid and her face was pale. Even though she was being roasted by the flames, she still looked very pale. Beside her, a male student whispered, "What's there to be afraid of? Mentor Xia Luo should be nearby. These flames are spreading very slowly so they won't burn us." That's right, Zhou Xian. Don't be afraid. I heard that all of Astral 10's ancient battle techniques are here. If we can find one, we'll be rich. Zhou Xian muttered to herself, I wonder if any of the legends came here to search for it. Definitely. That year there were Lu Ju, Mavis and Mentor Xia Luo, the male student said. Suddenly, the flames were torn apart as a terrifying force tore through the void and slashed out from behind them. Fortunately, they were lucky, or else the shockwaves from that attack would have been enough to annihilate them. Looking at the cracks in the ground and the spatial tears in the sky that had yet to dissipate, the students stared blankly in the direction of the shockwaves. They saw Xia Juyo's bone-chilling gaze as well as Xia Luo. Mentor Xia Luo. Zhou Xian couldn't help but shout, but the students beside her immediately covered her mouth as the group looked into the distance. Xiao Luo dodged the attack and saw the students in the distance. Xiao Juyo saw them as well and he raised his blade again and slashed down. Xiao Luo, stop resisting. Xiao Luo shouted, stop. Then he charged towards the blade. Xiao Juyo sneered. Idiot. He suddenly flipped his blade and used the back of the blade to strike Xiao Luo's forehead. Xiao Luo fell to the ground and crashed into the flames. Xiao Juyo landed on the ground and looked at the unconscious Xiao Luo. Soft-hearted. He then pressed his hand down and Xiao Luo slowly turned transparent before gradually disappearing. Xiao Juyo was ecstatic. He had succeeded. He had finally absorbed Xiao Luo. A wave of power surged out of his body and he roared at the sky. Everything in front of him changed and he could see a deeper layer of star energy. He raised his blade and easily retracted his blade intent, doing what Progenitor Qin had done during the Sovereign Tournament. After absorbing Xiao Luo, both his power level and his ability to use star energy had risen to a new level. More importantly, he now had an extra life. Only by using his current power level would he have a chance to fight for the opportunity, and he had to seize that opportunity. Whether it was Lu Yin, Wang Yi, Shangqing or Wu Taibai, no one could stop him. Xiao Juyo had an even grander plan in the depths of his heart, and this plan could only be carried out by cultivating the 9 clones technique. It was finally perfect. Just as Xiao Juyo was about to leave, the flames in front of him changed into Xiao Luo, who pounced on him like a malicious spirit. Xiao Juyo's expression changed. What's going on? You should have disappeared. The flames twisted and turned from Xiao Luo to Lu Yin, Shangqing, Wu Taibai and then Xiao Juyo's enemies, old friends and even family. Xiao Juyo's face paled and his expression changed. What was going on? What was going on? There was a loud boom as Xiao Juyo's brain buzzed and blood flowed out of his orifices. The intense shock caused his vision to blur and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood as his body crashed into the flames. Not good, it's an illusion. Buin. Xiao Juyo's eyes widened. Lu Yin, I know it's you. The first person he thought of was Lu Yin. Only Lu Yin could cooperate with Xiao Luo in ambushing him in Astral 10 and have the power to make him fall into an illusion. In outer space, the moment Xiao Juyo was injured, Xiao Meng's eyes widened and she took a step forward, attempting to enter Astral 10. However, Astral 10 was isolated by an invisible force. The Trial Master, Sand Master, Rain Master, Star Master, and Old Kai all appeared one by one. Xiao Meng's body swayed and she met everyone's eyes. You're all courting death. How dare you scheme against my Xiao family? The Trial Master raised a hand, and the flow diversion diagram appeared in front of him. Xiao Meng's power was dispersed, but she still had a power level of over 900,000. Even though the Trial Master had dispersed some of his power level, it still wasn't enough to stop her. The other mentors all attacked together, but they were still injured by Xiao Meng's palm strike. Scram. At that moment, a deranged laughter rang out from within the academy. You started this war, ha. Now you're eating your own medicine, ha. Xiao Meng's expression changed. These deranged voices were like sharp blades that pierced her brain, giving her a splitting headache. Astral 10's crazy director. The Trial Master and the others looked at each other before retreating back to Astral 10. Xiao Meng gritted her teeth and charged towards Astral 10 once more. Below, in the Rain Observatory, the crazy director seemed to sense something and he looked up with even more madness. War. He roared. No one knew what he had done, but the void from the Rain Observatory to outer space changed completely. It was as if another layer of the universe had been torn apart, and an unparalleled force descended upon Xiao Meng. Xiao Meng roared, "You old lunatic." She raised her hand and there was a loud boom. An invisible shockwave spread out from Astral 10 and swept out in all directions. At that moment, the entire erudite flow zone trembled, and the Astral River tributary was swept away. All of the cultivators in the erudite flow zone were shaken as they felt the terrifying power. The broom in Wen Zizai's hand fell from the Wen family's leader's hand. This power had completely destroyed his mood to sweep the floor. His face turned pale as he looked towards Astral 10. What was going on? Within the ruins of Astral 10 outside the flames, little Xian and the others saw a strange scene. First they were brushed past by the aftershock of a blade, and then they saw the man who had attacked Xiao Luo. The man named Xia. He stood still for a moment before laughing maniacally, just like the crazy director. Then an unknown attack sent him flying and he shouted out Lu Yin's name. Lu Yin was a legend to the students of Astral 10. It was because of him that Astral 10 had risen from decline to prosperity, and it had even been called Astral 1. All of them had joined Astral 10 because of Lu Yin. Senior Lu Yin, have you arrived? Xia Juyo was sent flying into the flames by Lu Yin's hollow palm, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His organs were in intense pain, but he still managed to escape from the illusion. However, his vision darkened again as nightfall appeared. Xia Juyo's pupils shrank, and he leapt out in a futile attempt to break free from Lu Yin's spiritual force attack. His spiritual force was much weaker than Lu Yin's. Nightfall's attack was easy to break free from, and Xia Juyo leapt out of the flames with blood dripping from his mouth. When he saw the dazed students staring at him from afar, his eyes flashed with ruthlessness as he reached out to grab them. He smoothly grabbed a girl by the neck. Lu Yin, I'll kill him if you attack again. Who do you want to kill? A familiar voice rang out in front of him, and Xia Juyo saw that the girl had turned into his father, Xia Yi. His scalp went numb. Not good, it was still an illusion. There was a thump and he felt a sharp pain in his head. The hollow palm had struck his brain and Xia Juyo weakly let go. He retreated a few steps and his pupils dilated. Everything in front of him became blurry and dark. He didn't know if what he was seeing was real or an illusion. The difference between them was too great. He hadn't even seen Lu Yin's face and he had been forced into a passive state from start to finish. Chapter 1339. There was a thump as Lu Yin appeared above Xia Juyo's head and slammed down with a palm. Xia Juyo coughed up blood again. This attack had taken away half of his life. The 9 clones technique had 9 lives and Lu Yin wasn't trying to kill Xia Juyo. Killing Xia Juyo would be pointless. If he wanted to, he could immediately deal with Xia Juyo, but that wasn't his goal. Xia Juyo half knelt on the ground, his arms trembling. He barely managed to maintain a bit of consciousness as he knew Lu Yin's goal. Lu Yin wanted to scatter his consciousness so that he could fuse with Xia Luo. He would rather die than fulfill Xia Luo's wish. Brother Juyo, my hand's broken. Xia Juyo was half conscious and he saw a child walk over. It was his younger brother, his biological brother. He was so cute and he looked at him with adoration. Another child walked over looking exactly like Xia Juyo. It was the younger Xia Juyo. Your hand's broken? Let me blow on it for you. Thank you, brother. A girl walked up behind Xia Juyo. Brother, let's go out and play. I heard people call us the 3 dark hands. So interesting. The younger Xia Juyo blinked. The 3 dark hands? What does that mean? It means that we're powerful. How about we go bully others? No, sister, don't bully others. Hey, who gave you that kindness? Brother Juyo, the nether refining palm is so hard to cultivate. Brother Juyo, I'm hungry. Brother, sister will spar with you. Isn't this Brother Juyo? Brother Juyo is so powerful. Brother Juyo is amazing. In the blink of an eye, the scene changed. Brother Juyo, kill me. The Xia family will only allow you to live. Brother Juyo, I don't want to die, but I want you to live. Farewell. Brother, remember to live. You have to live no matter what. Xia Juyo's eyes were bloodshot as scenes from the past flashed through his mind. He was filled with extreme sorrow, and his longing for his brother and sister caused him to collapse. Tears mixed with blood flowed from the corners of his eyes. Ever since he was sensible, the Xia family had instilled in him the idea of winning by hook or by crook. For this, Xia Juyo had killed his brother, his sister, and everyone he cherished. He had followed his father's orders step by step. Successfully cultivating the 9 clones technique was a necessary step for him to become stronger, but it was also a step for him to split his personality. His clones walked out one after another, and each of them took away a trace of his kindness. In the end, the only Xia Juyo left was ruthlessness, pretense, and mental exhaustion. Lu Yin stared blankly at Xia Juyo, who was shedding tears of blood. Xia Juyo's eyes were unfocused and his consciousness was blurry. Why was his gaze so sorrowful and unbearable at this moment? Xia Luo walked over and stood in front of Xia Juyo. Xia Juyo is a ruthless and unscrupulous person. He wants to become as strong as Ancestor Qin. In order to become stronger, he can ignore the rules, he can hide himself, he can let people humiliate him. But he's also very tired. Deep in his heart, there's still a trace of a desire to die. Fuse with him and replace him as the young master of the Xia family. At the same time you have to pick up this desire and this pain. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as he thought of Ming Yan. The white-haired Ming Yan had completely endured all of Ming Yan's pain and sorrow. Xia Zhuyo's situation was exactly the same as Ming Yan's. Actually, you also want to let it go. I've succeeded and you can be at ease. Xia Luo looked into Xia Zhuyo's eyes and spoke slowly as if he was trying to hypnotize him, but also as if he was making a promise. Xia Zhuyo's remaining trace of consciousness completely disappeared. Lu Yin turned and walked away. Only Xia Luo and Xia Zhuyo were left behind. It was only at this moment that Lu Yin finally understood Xia Zhuyo. Everyone had a side that no one knew about. In the mountain and sea realm, Xia Zhuyo had been defeated the moment he appeared, and he had been ridiculed by everyone. No one knew that all of this had been under his control. He had fused the 9 clones technique and reached the highest stage, becoming one of the strongest of the younger generation. He had been dazzling, but he had also ambushed Lu Yin in order to win the sovereign tournament. Xia Zhuyo had many sides, but now it seemed that they were all caused by his inner desires. Lu Yin thought back to Fu He Tongzhan and other enemies that he had killed. Did they also have sides that no one knew about? Lu Yin smiled bitterly, looked up and let out a long sigh. He had been thinking too much. This was how the universe was. As long as there was life, there would be a reason for its existence and an obsession to continue living. Lu Yin was the same. This was competition. Survival of the fittest. Kindness was the most worthless thing in this universe, and the only thing that could be maintained was a bottom line. In the distance, little Xian and the rest stared blankly at Lu Yin as he walked over. This was Lu Yin's original appearance, which had appeared in their minds countless times. It was the appearance of their idol. Lu Senior Lu. Little Xian cried out in surprise. The rest of the students looked at Lu Yin excitedly. Senior. Lu Ju. Sovereign Lu. The same scene played out again. They had not been able to meet face to face the last time, and this time, Lu Yin felt a little embarrassed. He had just ambushed someone and he still felt a little melancholy. Why are you guys here? It's dangerous, Lu Yin said. Little Xian was so excited that stars almost appeared in her eyes. Senior, you're back? Did you come back to graduate? Senior, I heard that you entered the rain list back then, right? So difficult. Senior, how does it feel to be lonely as an expert? Senior, what power did you use in the final battle of the sovereign tournament? It was so cool, so mesmerizing. Lu Yin's lips curled up, and he looked at the girl who had asked the last question. She was very tasteful. It's very dangerous here. Don't go any further and make the mentors worry. Senior, when did you come back? Little Xian asked. A few days ago. We've been guarding the space station and we haven't seen you before. I remember now. You're that legendary senior. Little Xian exclaimed, giving Lu Yin a fright. He did not deny it. I had something to do, but it's not convenient to talk about it. On the other side, a boy said, Senior, can you teach us? How to leave your name on the rain list. We've been at the rain observatory for a year, and we haven't even seen the rain list. Lu Yin smiled. When it comes to controlling star energy, you also need to have an understanding of it. That's comprehension. Let me give you a phrase. A world in a single flower. A world in a single flower. The juniors were confused. This phrase was enough to make them ponder it for the rest of their lives. Actually, Lu Yin was pondering it as well. Although his control of star energy had reached the world realm, he was still far from being able to compare to Drunkard. Drunkard was an expert who truly understood the meaning of a world in a single flower. A single drop of wine could trap 100 meridians and prevent them from escaping. She could also absorb the various weapons that Qin Guangshan had created. Her ability to control star energy had reached perfection. If possible, Lu Yin really wanted to discuss with Drunkard how to reach the profound realm of star energy control. A girl excitedly squeezed in front of Lu Yin, her face flushed red with adoration. Senior, you challenged one of the top 10 in the final battle of the sovereign tournament. Why was that power so cool? What kind of power was that? Everyone wanted to know what kind of power it was, and Lu Yin was certain that if it weren't for his own strength, countless people in the universe would have tried to capture him and interrogate him about that power. Lu Yin's strength had surpassed the Shangqing and the other top 10, and it had been a crushing defeat. That kind of power was too terrifying, and even Lu Yin himself felt that it was very difficult to control. I obtained that power by chance and it's very difficult for me to use it again. Lu Yin did not want to reveal too much. Lu Yin had a lot of fun chatting with these juniors. They were full of vitality and thirst for the universe. Their hearts were filled with an intense desire for adventure, but they had no idea what awaited them the moment they entered the universe. Even with Lu Yin's innate talent and ability, he had narrowly escaped death several times and he had even died. The universe was too cruel, and the competition within the academy and the oppression from powerful families were just the tip of the iceberg. They were nothing in the grand scheme of things. Remember Senior's words. No matter what you experience in the future, never give up hope. Even if you're facing an unimaginable monster, there's always a sliver of hope in the universe. You might be able to grasp it and you might not be able to grasp it. But if you give up, then it'll be the end of your life. Also, he smiled, Astral 10 is our home. Never forget home. Yes, Senior, everyone replied, looking at Lu Yin with excitement and adoration. Their respect for him had increased by a lot after just a short conversation. Alright, go back. Don't go into the ruins again, it's too dangerous. Lu Yin waved his hand. Goodbye, Senior. The students firmly believed in Lu Yin's words and resolutely carried out their orders. They left in the blink of an eye, their eyes filled with reluctance. Soon after, Xia Luo walked out of the flames with a smile on his face. Lu Yin turned around and met Xia Luo's eyes. The two did not speak and only looked at each other. After a while, Xia Luo spoke up. Brother Lu, why are you hesitating? Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Your gaze is unfamiliar. Xia Luo spread out his hands. There's nothing I can do about it. That's how fusing works. Xia Juyo didn't disappear and our consciousnesses fused together. His emotions and stubbornness affected me, but of course I'm still the dominant one. You're the second Xia Juyo. Lu Yin smiled. Xia Luo smiled. You could say that. Let's go out. Elder Xia Meng is getting impatient. Lu Yin nodded. Outside Astral 10, Xia Meng's expression was gloomy as she waited silently. Ever since the crazy headmaster had appeared, she had not made a move. If she could not break through, then it would be pointless. In the shadows, the expert that the Hall of Honor had sent to protect Xia Juyo had not made a move either. The trial master and the others looked at Xia Meng warily. Old Kai was anxious as he did not know how Lu Yin and the others were doing. They were still very worried about Xia Luo. After so many years of being together, Xia Luo was like Big Pao and Little Pao to them, a child. Although he did not say anything, his actions spoke volumes. If not for Xia Luo, they would not have taken the risk to resist Xia Meng. Fortunately, Xia Meng was too strong and had attracted the crazy headmaster's attention. Otherwise, Xia Meng would have broken through. Chapter 1340. The void distorted as Xia Luo and Lu Yin walked out. The trial master and the rest relaxed when they saw the two appear. Xia Luo had won. Across from them, Xia Meng stared at Xia Luo with a complicated expression. She didn't know what to think of this person. Who was Juyo or Juyo himself? No one could understand Xia Meng's feelings. She had always been protecting Xia Juyo. When he was young, Xia Juyo was kind and innocent. She liked him very much. Because of this, she had even offended the clan leader Xia Yi to conceal the 9 clones technique for Xia Juyo. Now that the 9 clones technique had merged, the main consciousness was not Xia Juyo. She clenched her fists and stared blankly at Xia Luo. This face was very similar to Juyo's. Xia Luo took a step forward and arrived in front of Xia Meng, looking up. Aunt Meng. Xia Meng shuddered. This was the name Xia Juyo had used when they had first met. It was also because of this that she had treated him like her own son. However, as Xia Juyo grew up and cultivated the 9 clones technique, his personality completely changed. He became ruthless and merciless, and he was good at disguising himself. She had never expected to hear this name again after so many years. You. Xia Meng's fingers trembled as she stared at Xia Luo. Xia Luo smiled. Aunt Meng, let's go home. Xia Meng stared at him blankly, as if she was seeing the kind and pure Xia Juyo from their childhood. Let's go home. Xia Luo looked back at Lu Yin. Brother Lu, I'll fulfill my promise to you soon. He then smiled happily. See you at that place soon. Lu Yin knew that Xia Luo was referring to the place where he could obtain his destiny. It seemed that he knew something. Xia Meng finally noticed Lu Yin. and her eyes were filled with killing intent that made his scalp go numb. He frowned, but he wasn't worried. The Elysium Heavenly Master was always watching him, so it would be strange if Xia Meng dared to attack. Xia Luo hurriedly said, "Aunt Meng, he's my friend." Xia Meng stared at him, not knowing what to do. Revenge? She didn't know what she was feeling. He bowed to Xia Meng. "Senior, Xia Juyo is Xia Luo and Xia Luo is Xia Juyo. With Xia Juyo's temperament he won't be able to go far with the 9 clones technique, but Xia Luo is different." Xia Meng loosened her grip and snorted coldly. "Junior, sometimes you're too smart for your own good. It's best to keep a low profile when you go there. There are some places where you can't do as you please. If something happens to you, don't drag Jiao and little Luo down with you." Lu Yin smiled. "Rest assured, senior." Xia Meng was very unhappy with him, but there was nothing she could do about it. She left with Xia Luo. Before he left, Xia Luo bowed to the mentors of Astral 10. "I will be back. Please take care of yourselves." As he watched Xia Luo's departing figure, Lu Yin looked forward to the 900 million star essence that he had just received. It was an enormous sum of money that even the Hall of Honor's director would want to keep for himself. It was obvious how much it was worth, and it was enough to make anyone jealous. Lu Yin turned to the trial master and the others and bowed deeply. "This student has brought disaster to the academy. Thank you for your help." The Rain Master, Star Master, Sand Master and Trial Master only glanced at him before returning to the academy. Old Kai made a gesture that Lu Yin was very familiar with, and Lu Yin understood. "Rest assured, Old Kai. This student understands." Old Kai was satisfied. After the mentors left, Lu Yin looked through the void and saw a pair of turbid eyes that had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Came from Astral 10's Rain Observatory from the crazy director. It had been more than 10 years since Lu Yin had joined Astral 10, and he had barely spoken to the crazy director. He had also never seen the crazy director in his normal state, but the director had been of great help to him. He had helped Lu Yin break through to the Melder realm, deduced the 9th star of the serious art, and now even helped Lu Yin block Xia Meng. Even though the crazy director had not taught him anything, Lu Yin still respected this elder greatly. Before the Astral Combat Tournament, it was said that the crazy director had appeared and asked the mentors to guide them, which had allowed them to improve so quickly. These mentors were not actually mentors, but rather the crazy director's guards. As Lu Yin's status and outlook increased, he was able to see the past more clearly. For example, he was now certain that the crazy director was not crazy and was actually normal. He slowly descended to Astral 10 and arrived at the Rain Observatory. Rain pitter-pattered onto the limestone floor as Lu Yin flitted past several giant trees until he was not too far away from the crazy headmaster. He took one step at a time until he was less than 3 meters away from the headmaster. He slowly bowed. "Student Lu Yin greets the headmaster. Thank you for your help." The crazy director did not reply. His clothes were a mess and his hair was like a hornet's nest. His face was dirty and he was not wearing shoes. Lu Yin did not know what he had stepped on, but he looked very dirty. In the world of ordinary people he would have been a beggar. Lu Yin did not stand up and simply bowed with a respectful expression. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours and finally 10 hours passed. The crazy director did not move and neither did Lu Yin. "Have you graduated?" the crazy director asked in a melancholy tone. Lu Yin replied, "I haven't graduated yet." The crazy director looked up. "Then you're still a member of the academy. It's my duty to help you." Lu Yin was grateful. "I'm grateful for your help. I apologize for the trouble I've caused." "There's no need to apologize. All you have to do is carve your name on Astral 10 and become a guest mentor." Lu Yin was stunned. Guest mentor? Like Xia Luo? No, he did not leave his name on the academy. Instead, he left his name as Unbounded. In the future, no matter what happens, as long as Unbounded exists, you will exist. If Unbounded dies, you will die. The crazy director turned around and stared at Lu Yin sternly. Unbounded was the name of Astral 10's battleship. Lu Yin felt an indescribable solemnity. It was as if some sort of ritual was being carried out, or rather, someone was watching everything. If he agreed, he would have to bear some sort of karma. Unbounded, unbounded, unbounded. Lu Yin did not dare to casually answer. "Sir, may I ask where Unbounded comes from? Where does it go? And where does it end?" The crazy director's gaze was pious. It comes from the Daoist sect, but there is no end to it. Does humanity have an end? Even if there is, unbounded has no end. He must bear the hope of humanity, the seed of inheritance. This is unbounded's destiny. Lu Yin's eyes twitched. Seed of inheritance? Isn't that a war? The crazy director's eyes widened, and a terrifying pressure descended upon Lu Yin. Lu Yin felt as if everything around him had changed, as if the universe had been destroyed. He almost fell to his knees. Unbounded's mission is not to fight, but to pass on its legacy. Only by passing on its legacy can there be hope. The crazy director's eyes grew crazed as he laughed heartily. Ah, you started this war and now you're eating your own bitter fruit. Ah, you started this war. He then ran off and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Lu Yin had not expected that his words would drive the crazy director insane. He was stunned. The Rain Master walked out from nearby. Don't mind him. He's always like this and he won't be normal for more than a few days. Lu Yin was puzzled. Mentor, isn't Unbounded a battleship? Why is it an academy? The director seems to value it. The Rain Master's tone was heavy. He doesn't value the academy, nor does he value the honor of being the director. He values the name Unbounded. Unbounded. Lu Yin muttered to himself. The Rain Master gazed into the distance. We're only fulfilling our duties as mentors because of Unbounded. No matter what this battleship is called, it was once a leading ship. It led both astral battleships and humans, guiding the light and passing on the hope of humanity. No one can bring shame to Unbounded. What does the director mean by legacy? Lu Yin asked. The Rain Master replied, this involves too many things. Right now you just need to focus on your cultivation. We'll talk about it later. Ignore the director's request for you to leave your name in Astral 10 for now. When you become an emissary and recognize Unbounded, you can decide whether or not to leave your name there. Once you do, the burden will be more than you can bear. Lu Yin was curious. No matter what, the Astral Combat Academy was still just an academy or a battleship left behind from ancient times. How could it have more responsibilities than the Hall of Honor? That was impossible. However, the Rainmaster's words implied that Lu Yin did not have the qualifications to leave his name there. He was a paragon of his generation who had defeated the Prime Clear and was a genius who could request the protection of a half-ancestor. There were too many secrets in the universe. As for the matter of leaving his name, he was already conflicted, but now he was even more conflicted. He did not want to shoulder such a ridiculous burden. He just wanted to take care of his own matters. In the Neoverse, on the Summer Blade continent, the Xia family's patriarch, Xia Yi, officially announced that Xia Luo would be the heir. At the same time, he applied to the Hall of Honor for Xia Luo to replace Xia Jiuyo in the Sovereign Tournament's top 10. Whether it was Xia Jiuyo or Xia Luo, they could both be seen as clones of the main body. Now that Xia Jiuyo had fused with Xia Luo, his strength had increased by another level. The Hall of Honor had no reason to disagree. However, many people could not understand why Xia Jiuyo had been fused with Xia Luo. Xia Yi's attitude was even more perplexing. He did not seem to care. Xia Jiuyo and Xia Luo were both his sons, and no matter who fused with the other, it would not change this fact. In the depths of Xia Yi's heart, he hoped that Xia Luo would replace Xia Jiuyo because of Xia Jiuyo's deep hatred for him. In the Xia family, Patriarch Xia Yi slowly bowed. An elder stood in front of him, one of the 7 half-ancestors of the Xia family, Xia Ji. Xia Yi, you did not teach your son well. Do you admit to your crime? Said Xia Ji calmly, but when Xia Yi heard it, he was terrified. He had seen this elder more than once. Back then, this elder had killed many of the Xia family's direct descendants without saying a word. His methods were even more ruthless than his own. Junior admits his crime, said Xia Yi hastily. Xia Ji sighed. The 9 clones technique could have made Xia Jiuyo a perfect expert. 9 clones, each with their own Dao, could have even made up for the flaws in his character. Unfortunately, you taught that child so cruelly, making him think of the 9 clones technique as a way to split apart his grief. As a result, the flaws in the 9 clones technique are magnified, and he is unable to use its true power. The 9 clones technique was defeated one after another. That is an insult to Ancestor Chen. Chapter 1341. Hearing Xia Ji's words, Xia Yi was terrified. I was wrong. I didn't know that this child had cultivated the 9 clones technique. Xia Ji turned around and stared at Xia Yi. You don't even know what technique your son is cultivating? You're a joke. You're not qualified to be a father or a clan leader. Xia Yi trembled and hurriedly knelt down. Ancestor, please give me another chance. I won't make the same mistake again. Xiaji shook his head and looked up into the sky. That Xia Luo isn't bad. Nine Nether's personality is flawed and his personality makes up for it. Plus, he has a good relationship with Lu Yin, so he won't be completely helpless when it comes to competing for opportunities. Xia Yi lowered his head and understood. When Xia Meng brought the Nine Nether out, the ancestor must have known, but he did not interfere. He would rather have the Nine Nether fused with Xia Luo. In the eyes of the old ancestor, there was no difference between Xia Juyo and Xia Luo. They were both successors of the Xia clan, and Xia Luo was far more suitable than Xia Juyo. Get up. Even if I remove you from the position of family head, no one can replace you for now. Unfortunately, the Xia family is getting worse with each generation. Once I die, the Xia family won't even be able to keep its position as the head of the 7 courts, said Xiaji. Xia Yi heaved a sigh of relief and stood up. Ancestor, there are too many geniuses in this generation. The appearance of the ancestral qi of the 3 sons can draw out progenitor Qin and progenitor Hui, as well as the 6th mainland and the astral beast domain. There's also Lu Yin, who doesn't understand power. Even the 9 clones won't be able to reach such heights. Xiaji said indifferently, if I had known that this child was cultivating the 9 clones technique, I would have been able to help him. I would have asked some of my old friends to teach him in private. Once he had fused with them, his strength would have undergone an earth-shattering change. But now, as he thought about it, he felt helpless. We'll talk about it later. After he finished speaking, his mind flashed back to the last battle of the Sovereign Tournament. Lu Yin's strange appearance made him feel like he had heard of something similar before. But where? At this moment, Xia Yi's gadget rang. He looked down and was surprised. Was this 9 Nether? Oh, it should be Xia Luo. Xiaji saw it too, but he did not react. Xia Yi answered, what's the matter? Xia Luo's voice came from the other side. I'll have to trouble father to tell Nan Yuan to give the 1 billion star essence stored in the Mavis Bank to Lu Yin. 1 billion. Xia Yi raised an eyebrow. Even though he was the head of the Xia family in the 7 courts, he could not ignore a 1 billion star essence. This is the gift I promised Lu Yin. I can't go back on my word. Xia Luo's tone was gentle, and he wasn't worried at all that Xia Yi would refuse. After fusing with Xia Juyo, even if he was the main body, he would still be subconsciously influenced by Xia Juyo's past thoughts. He was Xia Juyo, and Xia Juyo hadn't truly disappeared. His impression of Xia Yi was naturally very deep. At this moment, Xia Yi would definitely not refuse any of his requests because he was the only direct descendant of the Xia clan. Xia Yi would not go so far as to start a conflict with Lu Yin over a 1 billion star essence. Xia Luo's guess had not been wrong. A 1 billion star essence was indeed a lot, but it was not enough to cause Xia Yi to fall out with Xia Luo. He did not wish for Xia Luo to become a second Xia Juyo. Alright, I understand. I'll let Nan Yuan know. Thank you, father. Xia Luo smiled and hung up. Far away, Xia Meng was feeling very uncomfortable. He hated Lu Yin to the core. He had defeated Xia Juyo during the Supreme Tournament, and he had even caused Xia Juyo to disappear after the tournament. Even if Xia Luo was the main culprit who asked him to be Xia Luo, she had long since transferred all of her anger onto Lu Yin, and it was even more so. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything to Lu Yin. Otherwise, Xia Meng would definitely take action. Even if she couldn't kill him, she would still teach him a lesson. Stay away from Lu Yin in the future. He's obviously not a good person. He's a cultivator, but he doesn't focus on his cultivation. Instead, he engages in schemes and politics, and he's even trying to become the master of the Outerverse. Not only is he wasting his time, but he's also lowering himself. This kind of person will bring disaster upon himself sooner or later, Xia Meng said coldly. Xia Luo smiled. I understand, Aunt Meng. Every time Xia Luo called her that, Xia Meng's heart would soften, and she would look at Xia Luo with a doting gaze. It was as if she was looking at a younger Xia Juyo. Lu Yin also left the Astral Combat Academy, but before he left behind a 1 million star essence for old Kai. This amount of money was no longer important to him, but it was still very helpful to the Astral Combat Academy. This academy had once been so poor that it even had to sponsor its spacecraft. Old Kai was already satisfied. As soon as he left the Astral Combat Academy, Lu Yin received an invitation from the Wen family to visit them. He declined as there was no need for him to visit the Wen family at this time. He still had other matters to attend to. Lu Yin's spacecraft headed towards the blazing mist flow zone. A day later his gadget beeped, and Lu Yin received Nanyuan's confirmation that he could withdraw 1 billion star essence from the Mavis Bank. Lu Yin was ecstatic. Billion? Wasn't it 900 million? He had told Xiao Luo that it would be 900 million, but he had never expected that Xiao Luo would directly give him 1 billion. Endless money might not be of much use to others, but to Lu Yin, it was a shortcut to increasing his strength. He immediately ordered his spacecraft to find the nearest Mavis Bank branch. He wanted to withdraw all of this money just in case. It was unrealistic to think that he could withdraw 1 billion star essence from a single Mavis Bank branch. No matter how rich the Mavis Bank was, it was impossible for any random branch to have so many star essence. Even if there were 10 branches, they wouldn't have that much star essence, let alone one. Lu Yin could only withdraw them one by one. Finally, he withdrew all of the money from the 13th Mavis Bank branch, and by then he had already returned to the blazing mist flow zone. Lu Yin rubbed his cosmic ring. His current wealth had reached 1,712 billion star essence, which was a terrifying number. Even the leading powers of the Innerverse 8 great flow zones would not be able to take out so much money in one go, let alone an individual. If there was a wealth list, he would probably be ranked on it. Since he had money now, it was time to upgrade his external items. After returning to the Blaze realm, Lu Yin ignored everything and went straight into seclusion. In the Outerverse at the Shenwu Continent's palace, 2 groups of people were facing off. One group was made up of the natives of the Shenwu continent who were guarding the palace, while the other group was made up of representatives from the Great Yu Empire who had been stationed on the continent. The leader was a woman who was a hunter, and she had an ugly expression on her face. "I'll say it again. Get out of the way. We must see the Empress today," the woman shouted. Her strength as a hunter caused the palace to tremble. On the other side, the people from the Shenwu continent all turned pale, as they did not have any martial gods who could contend against this woman. If not for the fact that she had been apprehensive about the Empress' prestige and had not forcefully attacked, they would not even have had the qualifications to stop her. Bei Hong walked out and looked at the woman before looking back at the palace. "Get out of the way. The Empress hasn't shown herself in a long time. If this continues, no one will be able to control the situation." The palace's guards heard this and helplessly retreated. The woman rushed into the study, but she did not find any trace of Ming Yan. There was only a trembling maid. The woman's face paled. It was over. She really wasn't here. How had she left? She had not become an explorer and had not been received by a hunter, so she should not have been able to leave the Shenwu continent. It was precisely because of these 2 reasons that the woman had not cared about Ming Yan's absence. Now, however, the worst outcome had occurred. Bei Hong had not expected Ming Yan to really leave. The woman stared at Bei Hong. "If His Highness finds out about this, we will all die." Bei Hong replied, "I know, which is why I cannot tell His Highness. Immediately send someone to contact the space station and see if they have received the Empress. If they haven't, then it means that the Empress has not left the Shenwu continent. Send someone to look for her." The woman nodded. She was already panicking, so she could only listen to Bei Hong. Bei Hong's heart continued to sink. He thought about Ming Zhaoshu's death as well as the kidnapping of Ming Yan, which had almost caused her to die from poisoning. Could those people still be alive? Had they attacked Ming Yan? That would be troublesome. This matter could not be concealed for much longer. In the Blaze realm, Lu Yin raised his hand and his die slowly rotated. He tapped out 6 pips. 6 pips consumed an endless amount of star essence. When Lu Yin appeared in that strange space, he subconsciously searched for the brightest ball of light and directly fused with it. The scene in front of him changed and he appeared in outer space. There was a battlefield all around him and an intense pain swept through his body. Lu Yin looked down and saw that the person he had fused with had been sliced apart. A pair of scarlet vertical eyes appeared in front of him, and they were cold and emotionless. They stared at Lu Yin and reached out to grab him. Lu Yin subconsciously wanted to use the planned secret art to dodge, but this body was not his, so he was unable to use it. A hand pierced through his neck and fresh blood dripped from the fingertips onto his back, forming a river of blood. Lu Yin had not expected that he would die right after fusing with an enlighter with a power level of over 300,000. Around him, too many people had died and even space itself had been dyed red. His vision darkened and Lu Yin's consciousness returned to his body. He suddenly opened his eyes and his pupils shrank to the size of needles. He had just died. He had once again experienced the feeling of death. Everyone could only experience it once, but he had experienced it more than once. Suddenly, the black and white fog in his heart throbbed and then slowly rotated as if it was pulling something, causing it to grow a bit stronger. Lu Yin was puzzled. During the final battle of the Sovereign Tournament, he had used the power of the black and white fog to undergo the Reaper transformation. After that, the fog had become much thinner, and it had shrunk by at least half its original size. If he used the Reaper transformation again, the black and white fog might disappear. Lu Yin had always been worried that this power would disappear, and he wanted to find a place where the death aura was produced. However, such a place was not easy to find. He had not expected that his experience of death would actually cause the black and white fog to grow a bit stronger. Even if it was only a tiny bit, it meant that it was useful and he did not need to completely rely on absorbing death aura. He did not know whether to be happy or worried, as experiencing death was not a good feeling. Back then he had intentionally allowed Ling Ke to kill him because he had no other choice, but just now he had intentionally experienced death because he had not been able to react in time. Just thinking about it made him panic. However, he had no other choice. If he wanted to maintain the power of the Reaper transformation, he had to do so. Chapter 1342. Fortunately, he had finally found a way to cultivate the Reaper transformation. The Reaper transformation, it really could only be transformed after death. What was that place just now? Lu Yin thought about it, but he couldn't figure it out. He used star crystals to restore his die and continued rolling. Wait, how many star essences had he just spent? This was a serious problem and Lu Yin hurriedly took a look before relaxing. Fortunately, he had spent over 50 million star essences, which was still acceptable. He continued rolling his die and this time he rolled a pi 1 which dropped a gadget. Lu Yin looked at it, but it was meaningless and very ordinary. He tossed it away and continued rolling. It was still a pi 1 and it dropped another gadget. Lu Yin was speechless and looked at it again, but it was still meaningless. Why did he keep dropping things like this today? Still, it was better than throwing away those women's underwear. This time his luck wasn't bad and he rolled a pi 1. He watched as the two screens rose up, as this was what he was looking forward to the most. He threw the universal armor onto the screen and began to frantically use star essence. This universal armor had already been upgraded 10 times, and the 10th upgrade had cost him more than 14 million star essence. Its rune lines were already close to 600,000, and Lu Yin didn't know how many more upgrades it could take. Star essence continued to be consumed, and the armor finally dropped after almost 30 million star essence. This was the 11th upgrade, but Lu Yin didn't feel any heartache and continued. On the 12th upgrade he had spent almost 60 million star essence. He had suddenly lost 90 million star essence, which made his heart ache. He continued. However, it was useless as the star essence hadn't been consumed. The universal armor could no longer be upgraded, as the materials had already reached their limit. He looked at the boundless rune lines, which should be no less than 700,000 rune lines. This meant that with this universal armor, Lu Yin could defend against attacks from powerhouses with a power level of 700,000. What a pity, as it would be great if he could upgrade it a few more times. Even though the rune lines were around 700,000, it wouldn't be easy to defend against a powerhouse with a power level of 700,000. He would also need to obtain better materials to either fuse with the armor or reforge it. If he reforged it, then the money he had spent on this universal armor would be gone. Forget it, he would just give it to someone else. Wendy Yushan or Ming Yen would be fine. The next one to be upgraded was the exquisite lake spring water. Actually, Lu Yin had long since wanted to upgrade the ink jade lake spring water. When he had done so before, he had dripped it into his eyes, which had allowed him to directly comprehend the Divine Eye Realm's star energy control. He didn't know how much the ink jade lake spring water would allow him to clearly see the universe. This universe was very mysterious, and there was a saying that the end of the microscopic was the macroscopic. Lu Yin was looking forward to it. He only had 18 drops of spring water left, and 5 of them had been upgraded 14 times. He took out a drop and began to crazily toss out star essences. Back then, Lu Yin had only spent 560,000 star essence to upgrade himself 14 times. Yes, Lu Yin could now ignore that amount of money as it was only 560,000 star essence. 15th time, 16th time, 17th time. Every time the lake's water was upgraded, it became more transparent and gave Lu Yin a strange feeling. Staring at the lake's water was like looking through a key to another world. That world might seem mystical to ordinary people, but Lu Yin knew that it was a microscopic world that only world-level cultivators who could control star energy could see. The 18th time, the 19th time, and finally the 20th time the Ink Jade Lake's water could no longer be upgraded. Lu Yin took a deep breath as he stared at the nearly invisible drop of spring water. Even though it didn't drip into his eyes, he could still feel its coolness. Through the Ink Jade Lake's water, Lu Yin could see a different universe with many layers. What he saw was different from what he usually saw, or rather what humans saw. This was just what he could see through the Ink Jade Lake's water. Lu Yin carefully picked it up and thought for a moment before dripping it into his eyes. He had to try out the effects, but he was certain that it wouldn't harm him. As the Ink Jade Lake's water dripped into his eyes, his mind became clear and his thoughts cleared. When he opened his eyes, they were bright and clear like a clear spring that could even reflect the scenery around him. At this moment, what Lu Yin saw had completely changed. Aside from the space that he was currently in, he could also see another void, a strange region that was hidden beneath the void that was visible to the naked eye. He saw specks of dust floating about and he saw extremely tiny creatures crawling about. He saw a scene that was completely different from what he could see with his naked eye. Could this be the true universe that was spoken of in legends? The battles between powerhouses at the level of emissary could not be seen by ordinary people, and it was said that those battles took place in the true universe. What Lu Yin was seeing now might be that part of the universe. Did that mean that he could see emissaries fighting? He looked around and saw that everything was dark and lightless. He looked at the heavens and it was the same. There seemed to be no light source in the other void, and there were no large creatures either. It was a microscopic world. After about a minute, the Ink Jade Lake's water effect disappeared, and that part of the universe was no longer visible. Lu Yin rubbed his eyes, but there were no aftereffects. If his guess was correct and he could really see emissaries fighting, then he would no longer be powerless against them in the future. The universal armor could defend against attacks from powerhouses whose power levels were more than 600,000, but Lu Yin didn't want to be a punching bag. He couldn't see anything when an emissary attacked him, but now he had a way to deal with it. During his battle with Crimson Lord, it was fortunate that the Ice Empress had injured him and prevented him from using the power of an emissary. Otherwise, no matter how many tricks Lu Yin had up his sleeve, he would have just been sending himself to his death. Lu Yin couldn't help but rejoice at his own foresight. A normal emissary was not something that he could deal with. Even if he became an enlighter with a power level of 300,000 or 400,000, he still might not be able to challenge an emissary. That was a completely different level of power, and it was a metamorphosis of a human's life. It was a metamorphosis from the macroscopic to the microscopic. Lu Yin's eyes burned with desire as he looked at the Ink Jade Lake's water. This item was too valuable, but the price to upgrade it was also very high. Upgrading a single drop of water to the level that he had just seen cost almost 40 million star essence, which was too ridiculous. Furthermore, the effects would only last for about a minute. Lu Yin sighed, but it was impossible for others to see that part of the void, even if they had to pay a high price. Comparatively speaking, spending 40 million star essence to watch an emissary fight was worth it. There were still 4 drops of Ink Jade Lake's water left, and Lu Yin upgraded them 20 times. He had spent a total of 140 million star essence, which was another 100 million in the blink of an eye. There were still 13 drops of Ink Jade Lake's water that had not been upgraded. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and upgraded all of them. The enemies that he would face in the future would not just be enlighters but rather emissaries. If possible, he would rather upgrade them a bit more. The 13 drops of Ink Jade Lake's water had cost him 520 million star essence. Lu Yin had never thought that he would spend so much money on the Ink Jade Lake's water before upgrading it. He had spent almost 700 million star essence, which was terrifying. He had originally had 7 billion star essence, but after using Enhance on his die and upgrading his universal armor, as well as the water from the ingenious lake, he only had a little more than 850 million star essence left. His eyes twitched as this was too much of a waste of money. He felt that he was still poor and he once again envied the Mavis family. Before he had rolled his die, his heart had been filled with pride, but now it was time to restrain himself. Currently he urgently needed to upgrade his powerful offensive weapons. He already had quite a few, such as the Walnut Power Vessel, Battle Arrows, Poisons, the Tianhuang Array Source Box, Madame Land's Sphere, Karmic Fire, the Giant's Right Arm and the Smothered Cannon. However, it seemed like the only thing that could be upgraded was Karmic Fire. The Walnut Power Vessel could not be upgraded, and while the Poisons could be upgraded a few more times, they could not be upgraded to the point where they could threaten an emissary. The Giant's Right Arm and the Smothered Cannon were limited by their materials and could not be upgraded any further. He looked at the Karmic Fire in front of him and realized that he could only upgrade it, but what was the point of upgrading it? He did not know how to use the Karmic Fire Sword, nor did he cultivate any top-notch fire-type battle techniques. It was unrealistic for him to display the Karmic Fire's power. Lu Yin was a little distressed, as it would be great if he could obtain an offensive weapon that could be upgraded without limit. Right, there was still the Heaven Flame Stone that could be upgraded, but Lu Yin did not dare to upgrade it. Who knew if it would upgrade the Fire Dragon? He still needed the Heaven Flame Stone to cultivate and he could not let it be wasted. A Fire Dragon was of no use to him. This time he did not stay in seclusion for long, mainly because he had not rolled Enhance. After entering the time-stop space, Lu Yin had no interest in continuing his seclusion. For the sake of the Sovereign Tournament, his realm had risen a little too quickly. As long as he could obtain more fire and let the Heaven Flame Stone absorb it, he could continue to rapidly increase his realm. He urgently needed an offensive weapon that could be upgraded without limit. As soon as he walked out of the secret room, he checked his gadget and saw that many people were contacting him. The most diligent of them all was Madame Yu. Lu Yin immediately contacted her. She quickly appeared on the screen and glared at Lu Yin. Her tone was somewhat unpleasant. Alliance Leader Lu, what's the point of toying with people? Lu Yin apologized. I'm really sorry for the delay, Madame Yu. How about this? I'll go to the Southern Weave right now and we can talk face to face. How about that? Madame Yu was so angry that her chest heaved. That was not what she meant. Lu Yin had purposely told her that they would meet in the Southern Weave, and she had passed the information to the Xia family. That was why Xia Juyo had dared to go to Astral 10. If not for her information, Xia Juyo would not have been in trouble. Although no one blamed her, she had indeed been used by Lu Yin, and the Xia family would not treat her kindly. However, she could not complain to Lu Yin about this. Was she supposed to tell him that she was still in contact with the Seven Courts? That she had sold him out? The more she thought about it, the more sullen she felt. Madame Yu had lived for so many years, and she had maintained contact with the Seven Courts under the Sword Sect's surveillance without being discovered. She had been cautious to a certain extent, but now she had been played by a junior. She could not even voice out her grievances. She had never experienced such a feeling in her entire life. Madame Yu's expression changed when she saw Lu Yin's apologetic expression. She could not guess whether Lu Yin had purposely used her to pass the information or whether he had not considered her and had unintentionally delayed their meeting. She could not see through this youth. Chapter 1343. It's best if Alliance Master Lu is willing to talk face to face. My Yu family will be waiting for you in the Southern Weave, Madame Yu helplessly said. Lu Yin nodded, but then he suddenly thought of something. Oh no. Madame Yu was puzzled. Alliance Master Lu, what's the matter? Lu Yin looked at Madame Yu awkwardly. I'm sorry, madam, but I can't go to the Southern Weave. Madame Yu was infuriated and she glared at Lu Yin. Alliance Master Lu, my Yu family does wish to join the Great Eastern Alliance, but we still have some strife. We're not begging for your help, so please don't insult my Yu family. Lu Yin hurriedly replied, Madame Yu, you've misunderstood. It's not that I don't want to see Madame Yu, but that someone is preventing me from going. Who? Madame Yu gritted her teeth. She now felt that this Lu Yin was rather detestable. It was no wonder why so many people wanted to kill him. Lu Yin shrugged. Supreme Sage Heavenly Teacher. Madame Yu was taken aback. Who? Senior Sage Heavenly Master. Madame Yu was stunned. Of course she knew who the Supreme Sage Heavenly Master was. He was one of the 7 demigod ancestors of the human domain, a true peak powerhouse. Even her Yu family's elder Diyun had to look up to him. Yet the Supreme Sage Heavenly Master didn't allow him to go? What did he mean? Could it be that he was hostile towards the Seven Courts? Or did he know about her plans for the Yu Court? Why? Madame Yu asked nervously. Lu Yin replied, accidents happened one after another in the top 10 of the sovereign tournament. Bu Kong died, Wang Yi went missing, Wu Taibai was heavily injured, and now Xia Juyo is gone as well. Senior Celestial Master wants me to do my best not to go out and wait for the moment to gather in the Neoverse. Madame Yu didn't know what to say. The first 3 incidents had happened from the very beginning, while Xia Juyo was the result of this bastard's own plan. Now he was actually blaming the Neo-Human Alliance. Did he have any shame? He was actually unwilling to meet them because of this. Madame Yu really wanted to cut him down. Lu Yin knew that he was in the wrong, so he coughed and said, sorry Madame Yu. Senior Sage is calling me. Talk to you later. He then quickly hung up, feeling a little guilty. It was both because of Madame Yu and the Holy Heavenly Master that he had faked the Imperial Edict. In Yu Court, Madame Yu was so angry that she almost cursed out loud. Her self-restraint was extremely good, and she had never suffered such grievances since she was born. She was actually played by a junior one after another. Bastard, bastard. Yo Ye looked at Madame Yu's furious expression and whispered, this Lu Yin isn't sincere at all. Let's not rely on him. No, he's the only one in the innerverse and outerverse who can protect us, Madame Yu said. Although she was furious, she had not lost her rationality. Yo Ye understood this as well. But his attitude makes it clear that he doesn't want to accept our Yo Court. Madame Yu took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Her gaze was deep as she said, he will accept it. As long as the Great Eastern Alliance doesn't slow down, they will eventually arrive at the first flow zone and face us one day. He's not stupid and he's just stalling for time. He wants to know our true goal, and it's also possible that he has guessed that we haven't split with the 7 courts. You really guessed it? Yo Ye was surprised. Madame Yu was not certain either, but this was the only possibility. Otherwise, Lu Yin's attitude would not make sense. If that was the case, then she had indeed been used by Lu Yin. Lu Yin really did not want to get involved with the Yu family. He did not know what this family's goal was, but they had taken the initiative to split from the 7 courts and then taken away the Yo family to form a marriage alliance with the Sword Sect. All of this was too abnormal and he did not want to invite trouble. The Great Eastern Alliance had not occupied the Blaze Realm for very long, but the hostility between the Sylvan Dragons and the Ross Empire had never relaxed. The next step for the Great Eastern Alliance was to withdraw from the Blazing Mist Flow Zone, and Wei Rong was already making preparations to head to the Fennel Flow Zone. As long as they occupied the Fennel Flow Zone, the Great Eastern Alliance would immediately withdraw from the Blazing Mist Flow Zone and hand over the Flow Zone to the Sylvan Dragons and the Ross Empire. This would show the Great Eastern Alliance's goodwill and harmlessness. As for who the Blazing Mist Flow Zone would ultimately belong to, that would depend on the competition between the Sylvan Dragons and the Ross Empire. Lu Yin did not care, as this was what he wanted as well. He would let them compete and fight for it. In any case, the Blazing Mist Flow Zone would eventually belong to him. He no longer cared about the Blazing Mist Flow Zone. After chatting with Wang Wen for a bit, he took the General Tablet and headed to the Outerverse. It was time to go to Earth to investigate, but before that he had to return to Xenu Star. After all, that was his home there. No matter who the Blazing Mist Flow Zone belonged to, the Astral River Arc had to remain under the control of the Great Eastern Alliance. This was Lu Yin's request. Currently, the Astral River Arc was filled with members of the Great Eastern Alliance, and when they saw Lu Yin they all bowed. Lu Yin had returned to the Outerverse in a high-profile manner. The Outerverse was now like Lu Yin's backyard. The moment he appeared, the Allied forces guarding the borders of the Astral River bowed, which made many cultivators on the Astral River Arc envious. Lu Yin did not stay. He boarded his spacecraft and headed towards Xenu Star with the General Tablet in tow. From the Astral River Arc to Xenu Star he would pass by Dark Mist Weave. He had deliberately chosen a route that would pass by Mafioso Planet. Top Mist had already returned to Mafioso Planet from Iron Blood Weave. When Lu Yin's spacecraft landed, the assassination planet that was Mafioso Planet was in an uproar. Mafioso Planet was the largest assassination organization in the Eastern Weaves, and a large part of the reason why Lu Yin had been able to establish the Great Eastern Alliance was because of the information provided by Mafioso Planet. Mafioso Planet had long since joined the Great Eastern Alliance, and Lu Yin had come here to understand more about Mafioso Planet's power vessel, the Bloody Handprint. Top Mist looked at the youth in the distance with a complicated expression. The first time they had met was still vivid in his mind. The assassination attempt had failed and an enlighter had died. If not for Top Mist's height, he would have died as well. Ever since then, this youth's name had never stopped, regardless of whether it was in Ironblood Weave Endless Weave, or the Outerverse Unification War. This youth had gradually become the master of the Outerverse, and now he possessed strength that even Top Mist had to look up to. Now killing Top Mist would not require any external aid and it would be easy. Top Mist greets the Alliance leader, Top Mist said from within the black fog. The black fog covering his body dissipated, revealing his 1-meter-tall body. Lu Yin looked at Top Mist. If this person had not been 1 meter tall, then Lu Yin would have ended him with a single shot, and none of the subsequent events would have occurred. Long time no see. Senior is still as elegant as ever, Lu Yin said with a smile. Top Mist was terrified as he had always been timid and good at preserving his own life. He had also expressed his attitude early on, or else he would not have been able to survive until now. In front of the Alliance leader, this lowly one does not dare to call himself senior. Lu Yin waved a hand and took a step forward. He swept past Top Mist and entered Mafioso Planet. Top Mist's pupils shrank. He had not sensed Lu Yin's speed at all, and the youth had already appeared behind him. If Lu Yin had attacked him, Top Mist believed that he would not have been able to last even a second. No matter what life-saving techniques he had, even if he had not used up his bloody handprint power vessel, he would not have been able to defeat Lu Yin. The strength that the top 10 had displayed during the Sovereign Tournament was enough to make him despair. Top Mist became even more respectful. Mafioso Planet was gloomy all year round, and it had nurtured many assassins. Lu Yin's domain swept through the area, and his domain's range was quite wide. In the blink of an eye he found a familiar face, the bespectacled Mistchild. The bespectacled Mistchild looked up and saw Lu Yin looking at her. Her eyes lit up as she had always wanted to take the initiative to contact Lu Yin, but he had been too fast for her to keep up. She had never thought that Lu Yin would appear on Mafioso Planet. Lu Yin had never forgotten about the bespectacled Mistchild, as this female assassin had helped him greatly in the past. Even though she had her own plans, her innate gift was very precious. She could increase her strength by consuming poisons, and Lu Yin just so happened to have the most poisonous poisons. He currently had 5 bottles of Elder Wu's poisons, all of which had been upgraded 8 times. They were enough to threaten an envoys, and they had also been the reason why he had been able to heavily injure Crimson Lord. These poisons could not be upgraded due to the limited materials used. He casually took out a bottle and tossed it to the bespectacled Mistchild. The bespectacled Mistchild was delighted and she hurriedly caught it. "Thank you, Your Highness." Lu Yin smiled, but he did not say anything else. He had left her with an opportunity, and how far she could go in the future would depend on herself. Perhaps her innate gift would bring him a pleasant surprise. Top Mist was not surprised that Lu Yin would help the bespectacled Mistchild, as the events of the past could not be hidden from him. The bespectacled Mistchild had cooperated with Lu Yin to deal with the other Mistchildren, obtain information on Mafioso Planet, and assist the Great Eastern Alliance. He had long since known about this. Now the bespectacled Mistchild's status on Mafioso Planet was second only to his own. This was not because of her strength but because of her relationship with Lu Yin. "Do you still have the blood palm?" Lu Yin asked as he toured Mafioso Planet. The scenery flashed past him and he quickly traveled through space. Behind him, Top Mist heard the question and replied, "No, I used it all back in Ironblood Weave." Of course, Lu Yin remembered as he was the one who had forced Top Mist to use it. Where did the blood palm come from? Top Mist did not dare to hide anything. Back then, an ancestor discovered a blood palm that had sunk deep into the ground. It was because of this blood palm that people settled on Mafioso Planet. As for where it came from, no one knows. "Are you saying that the blood palm appeared on Mafioso Planet before you?" Lu Yin asked. Top Mist respectfully replied, "Yes." Lu Yin fell into deep thought. In the universe, the history of a planet far surpassed that of a biological civilization. A planet could easily have a history of billions, or even 100 billion years. What about human civilization? Could not compare to the history of a planet. These planets were the ones that had truly experienced the ancient era. They had experienced the birth of humanity, its peak and its fragmentation. They had witnessed the powerhouses of the ancient era, as well as the era of progenitor Qin and the symbol progenitor. Just a single blood palm had been able to kill a powerhouse with a power level of 300,000. Perhaps it had come from an ancient powerhouse. Unfortunately, there was no way to investigate further. Lu Yin left Mafioso planet. In the sky, Top Mist watched Lu Yin's spacecraft depart until it was completely out of sight. Only then did he retract his gaze. He had never imagined that a brat from back then, an ant that he could casually kill, would grow to his current level. Who would be the master of this universe in the future? News of Lu Yin's return to Xenu Star had long since spread, and countless people were eagerly awaiting Lu Yin's return. When Lu Yin's spacecraft appeared, Xenu Star, the surrounding planets, and even the entire Frostwave Weave went into an uproar. Everyone was shouting Lu Yin's name, and statues of Lu Yin were erected on countless planets. Chapter 1344. It was Lu Yin who had brought Frostwave Weave to its current heights, and now Frostwave Weave had become the center of the universe. It was the center of economic and trade, the center of cultural exchange, and the center of power. Lu Yin had single-handedly created the core of the Outerverse, which had allowed the Frostwave Weave's status to surpass that of the other weaves. In the past, everyone had hoped to become a citizen of Myriad City and settle down there. Now, everyone hoped to become a citizen of Xenu Star and settle down there. The prices here had already soared to a height that normal people could not imagine. Lu Yin had set up the general appointment stage on Xenu Star and made a public appearance, which excited countless people in the Outerverse. Of course, there were also those who hoped that Lu Yin would be able to help them solve their practical problems. The most pressing problem was that the Outerverse had been gifted to the Sixth Mainland. Lu Yin wanted to resolve this matter as well, but he couldn't think of anything at the moment. The Sixth Mainland had descended upon the Fifth Mainland, and this was a general trend that no one could stop. It wasn't something that Lu Yin could reverse by relying on petty tricks or schemes. When faced with such a situation, avoiding it was the best course of action. As for whether or not he could return to the Outerverse in the future, that would depend on how high he could reach. However, it would take some time for the Sixth Mainland to fully occupy the Outerverse. The Outerverse's western weaves had already begun to move eastward, and this process was going to take a very long time. After returning to Xenu Star, Lu Yin summoned all the important officials of the Great Yu Empire. He held a meeting with the Lu Ministry of Staff, the Lu Ministry of Defense, the Cabinet, and even a court session. After that, he also met with Bei Qing, the captains of the 13 Imperial Squadrons, and so on. He had really made his presence known. In King Zishan's palace, Lu Yin took a sip of the green, viscous drink, clearly looking forward to it. Lu Yin nodded and smiled. Not bad. Zhao Ran was happy. By the way, Zhao Ran, have you heard of Zijing? Zhao Ran blinked in confusion and shook her head. Lu Yin did not ask any more questions as Kay's voice sounded out. Your Highness, Duan Day Knight requests an audience. Please come in, Lu Yin said loudly. He had subverted the Day Knight flow zone and rescued the White King bloodline. Now the White King bloodline was living on a planet not too far away from Xenu Star. Now that he had returned, the White King bloodline had naturally requested to meet him, even if they had only just met. For some reason, Zhou Day Knight had not come. Not long after, Duan Day Knight left King Zishan's palace. His discussion with Lu Yin had gone well. Lu Yin had agreed to help and protect King Zishan's bloodline, and King Zishan's bloodline had agreed to help Duan Day Knight as much as possible. The Great Eastern Alliance was growing larger and larger, and it had attracted more than just the various powers from the Outerverse. Many powers from the Innerverse also wanted to join the Great Eastern Alliance. Many people sought an audience with Lu Yin, but he didn't meet with all of them. He only met with a select few. At night, he went to the fifth princess residence. Wendy Yushan was already waiting for him. It's getting harder and harder to see you. Lu Yin smiled bitterly. It's tiring. It's not like you're going to show up. Wendy Yushan calmly replied, It has nothing to do with me. Lu Yin shook his head. I hope that you can inherit the Great Yu Empire. After all, this country was founded by the Yu bloodline. Wendy Yushan looked at him. The Great Yu Empire won't agree. Wendy Yushan did not feel good when she said this. Even though she did not care about the Great Yu Empire or any sort of power, the Great Yu Empire had still been established by her family. Now she had to rely on an outsider, and even if this outsider was willing to return the empire, the Yu bloodline would not be able to do so. This made her feel somewhat dejected, as this was a testament to her family's incompetence. Lu Yin didn't want to talk about this topic any longer as it was rather heavy. Actually, everyone in the Great Yu Empire hoped that he would no longer be the royal regent but instead become the emperor. Unfortunately, he did not have such thoughts at the moment. "How is Elder Su?" Lu Yin asked. He was asking about the place where the Yu bloodline lived in seclusion, the Elder Su who had been sealed in ice for many years. Wendy Yushan replied, "I just went to take a look. He's still sealed in ice." Lu Yin grunted and did not say anything else. He didn't stay in the fifth princess residence for long before leaving. He once again went to the tavern in the shadow of King Zishan's palace. It was clearly an inconspicuous little tavern, but it gave him an inexplicable sense of security. The tavern was very dim and Lu Yin did not need to hide his appearance. No one could see him clearly. He could not even remember how many times he had eaten in this tavern. It was still the same with muddy wine and side dishes. It was very comfortable. A commotion could be heard from the tavern in the distance. The owner of the tavern was still as shrewd as ever, and no matter how much the outside world offered him, he would not sell. Not long after, light footsteps could be heard from behind him. A frail figure sat at a nearby table and spoke in a bleak and hoarse voice. "Boss, a jug of wine." Lu Yin paused in the middle of drinking as a voice brought him back to 10 years ago. He slowly turned around and saw a pale and thin face hidden in the dim light. It was her Jenny Anna. Lu Yin had not expected to run into her here. The high-spirited girl from back then had now become abnormally haggard, as if she had become a completely different person. If there was one woman Lu Yin had been the most ruthless to, it would definitely be Jenny Anna. Not only had he ruined her marriage, but he had also left her with a shadow that she would never be able to walk out of for the rest of her life. She had become the shame of the Anna family and carried heavy shackles on her shoulders. It was very difficult for a woman to stand up again after experiencing such a thing, and Jenny Anna was no exception. Lu Yin could not describe his emotions as he looked at the current Jenny Anna. Did he regret it? No, he did not regret it. If he had not done what he had done, he would have been the one to become a laughingstock. This woman was very pitiful, but she was also detestable. But after so many years, Lu Yin's impression of her had become blurry. The hatred he had felt had long since faded, and all that remained was pity. Jenny Anna took a sip of wine. She had discovered this tavern by accident. It was hidden and dim and no one would be able to see it clearly. She could even see above her head and see that person's home. She had long since lost her hatred for Lu Yin. It was just a matter of their different standpoints. Lu Yin put down his glass and looked at her calmly. This woman had already walked out and she had become completely different. She was no longer the Jenny Anna of the past. Jenny Anna sensed that someone was looking at her and she looked up to meet his gaze. Her body trembled and her hand trembled, causing the glass to fall onto the table. Lu Yin lowered his head and poured a glass of wine for her. She accepted it. "Thank you." As he watched her drink, he suddenly remembered what she had said in the past. "I only want to marry the person I love. Is that wrong? I like Yan Feng. What's wrong with that? The only mistake is that my family betrothed me to you. Lu Yin, do you really like me? You've never liked me and I can feel that the ring is not a sign of love. It's just a promise you made to the Anna family. In your eyes, I'm just a tool for your marriage. What's wrong with me marrying the person I love? I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to hurt you." Every word and sentence revealed this woman's pursuit of freedom and love. Was she wrong? Lu Yin had asked himself this question many times, but the answer had always been no. She had only wanted to pursue happiness, but in the end things had turned out this way. "I'm sorry," Lu Yin said in a low voice. To the side, Jenny Anna's body trembled and tears streamed down her face. She put down her glass and left. Lu Yin watched her leave, his heart heavy. Everyone had to pay for the mistakes they had made when they were young. He exhaled, took a sip of wine and then left. Today's wine was tasteless. A few days later, Lu Yin set off for Earth. He had already accomplished his goals for returning to Xenu Star, and one of them had been to see Delay again. He wanted to use Delay's thoughts to search for any abnormalities in Luiying Zishan, but there were none. Lu Yin had not forgotten about the abnormalities in Luiying Zishan. Xenu Star had some hidden dangers, but he had not been able to find them. He could not keep wasting his time here. There was also Ban Jiu's report on the new universal armor, but it had not yielded any results. The technocracy's level of civilization was beyond Banjio's knowledge, and he could not create any higher-level universal armor. If he wanted to obtain a better universal armor, he might have to make a trip to the technocracy. From Xenu Star to Earth, Lu Yin's spacecraft was very fast. Not long after, the beautiful blue planet appeared in front of him. It was surrounded by planets from the solar system, and the one that attracted Lu Yin's attention the most was Jupiter. When he saw Earth, Lu Yin was reminded of an old friend. Right, he had almost forgotten about Lu Xiaoga. How could he have forgotten about him? As he thought about it, Lu Yin contacted Barley. Barley was the spy that Lu Yin had placed in East San Dios. He had been the first to join Lu Yin, and he could read the vibrations in the air, which allowed him to learn some things. It had been a long time since Barley had received any contact from Lu Yin, and the gap between their statuses had grown wider and wider. After Lu Yin had become one of the 10 arbiters, Barley had not dared to contact him. He had not expected to receive a call from Lu Yin today. Lu Ju. Barley's figure appeared on the screen, and he bowed deeply to Lu Yin. Of the current 10 arbiters, Lu Yin was the strongest. Not only was he the strongest among the 10 arbiters, but he was also the strongest in all of humanity, including the 6th mainland. Barley's admiration for Lu Yin was indescribable, and he had rejoiced countless times that he had chosen to join Lu Yin. If not for seeing Earth and remembering Lu Xiaoga, Lu Yin would have almost forgotten about this person. Barley, how's Lu Xiaoga? Barley was terrified. He's not in East San Dios. He left before the start of the sovereign tournament. Lu Yin's gaze trembled. Do you know where he went? Barley shook his head, feeling apprehensive. Lu Yin had ordered him to keep an eye on Lu Xiaoga, but how could he have done so? He had wanted to report Lu Xiaoga's disappearance, but he did not dare to. I'm not sure. Lu Yin fell into deep thought. He did not blame Barley for not being able to keep an eye on Lu Xiaoga. With Barley's abilities, he definitely would not have been able to do so. Had he left before the sovereign tournament? Had he participated in the sovereign tournament? That was possible. There had been too many participants, and it was normal that Lu Yin had not noticed him. Was there anything strange in East San Dios? Lu Yin asked. Barley thought about it carefully. Yes. There was a powerful aura that came to East San Dios before the sovereign tournament, but it did not reveal itself. A powerful aura. Lu Yin was curious. Barley thought about it. It should have been an enlighter. Could it have been just passing by? That's not possible. That aura was intentionally hidden, and I was only able to sense their strength through the vibrations in the air. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to detect their power level. Chapter 1345. Lu Yin frowned. What was an enlighter doing in East San Dios? That place was only the Outerverse Youth Council, and it was of no value to an enlighter. Lu Yin wasn't even there, so the only person of value in East San Dios was Lu Xiaoga, as he was related to the Day-Night clan. Could it be the Day-Night clan? Lu Yin could not figure it out. He ended the call as there was no news from East San Dios. Lu Xiaoga's whereabouts were unknown, but Lu Yin did not care too much. In the past, Lu Xiaoga had made Lu Yin apprehensive, and he had even wanted to kill him. But now Lu Xiaoga's level was too far from Lu Yin's. Even Bai Qian was not worthy of his attention, let alone Lu Xiaoga. Lu Yin had only asked because he was curious, but that was all. There was a slight vibration as the spacecraft entered Earth's space station. Lu Yin tapped his feet and disappeared from the spacecraft, avoiding the space station's detection. He landed on Earth and appeared in Jinlin City. Earth had changed more and more, and there were more and more cultivators. Since this was Lu Yin's hometown and the starting point of his cultivation, there were many people traveling to Earth. If not for Earth's small size, it would have been equivalent to another Xenu star. Naturally, the prices here were also very high. Fortunately, that was relative to outsiders, as the prices of Earth's locals were still the same. Skyscrapers pierced through the clouds and flying machines roamed the skies. Occasionally, cultivators would take to the skies, but they would be intercepted by patrolling troops. The entire Jinlin city seemed to be filled with technology. No one would believe that only a dozen years had passed. 10 years ago, this place had been in ruins and it had looked like the end of the world. Lu Yin scanned the area with his domain and quickly found Zhou Xian. There were only a few old friends on Earth. Bai Shui and the others had disappeared on Jupiter, so Lu Yin could only look for Zhou Xian and the others. However, the gap between their realms had grown so large that it was almost invisible. Zhou Xian was the honorary headmaster of Jinlin Military Academy, and his status was extremely high. He had also been one of the 7 sages of China during Earth's apocalypse. Although he was weak and not even an explorer, no one could shake his position because he was Lu Yin's friend. In a spacious office with simple decorations, a middle-aged man was looking down at documents. On the wall behind him there should be words or pictures hanging on it, but here there was a battle axe hanging, making the office more austere. There was a knock on the door. "Come in." A young woman walked in and respectfully said, "Principal, the student seats have already been arranged. The ball organizers are giving our academy a lot of face, so the students will all sit in the middle and won't touch anyone else." "Alright, that's good. Arrange for a few more teachers to lead the team. Nothing must happen to the students," the middle-aged man said. The young woman acknowledged and retreated. The middle-aged man continued to examine the documents, not raising his head from beginning to end. "At first glance you really do look like an academy principal. Speaking of which, aren't you the honorary principal? Is there anything else you want to do?" The middle-aged man's expression changed drastically. How could he not know that someone had come in? He suddenly raised his head and looked at the person sitting on the sofa not far away. His expression was wild with joy. "You're back. Principal Zhou, you're becoming more and more presentable." Lu Yin smiled as he crossed his legs leisurely. Zhou Xian laughed, stood up and stretched. "Dealing with these matters is even more troublesome than fighting on the battlefield." He then pointed at the battle axe on the wall. "Look, it's rusted." Lu Yin smiled. "You won't have the chance to kill the enemy now. Your opponents will only be the students." Zhou Xian smiled bitterly. "I might not even be able to beat the students." This was the truth. Zhou Xian had never undergone systematic training, and some students might not necessarily lose to him. More and more people were coming to Earth to travel, and Zhou Xian's strength was nothing compared to them. "But it's still all right. With your face, no one dares to do anything to me." "Huh?" Zhou Xian laughed. At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open and a little girl in her teens walked in. "Dad, when is you academy coming? I must take the test, you can't stop me." Zhou Xian was embarrassed and quickly pulled her over. "Don't be rude. Come say hello to Uncle Lu." The little girl blinked in confusion and looked at Lu Yin. Her eyes lit up and her face flushed red. Lu Yin?" Lu Yin laughed. Zhou Xian growled, "What, Lu Yin? Don't be rude. Call him Uncle Lu." The little girl looked at Zhou Xian excitedly. "Dad, you weren't bluffing. You really know Lu Yin. Call him Uncle Lu." Zhou Xian patted her head. Lu Yin said, "What a cute little girl. You're called Cici, right? I've seen you before." The little girl was Zhou Xian's daughter, Zhou Cici. You've seen me before?" Zhou Cici was excited. Who didn't worship Lu Yin these days? This was especially true on Earth, where he was a god. Lu Yin nodded and smiled. "Not only have I seen you, but I've even hugged you. I was the one who gave you your formcast model." Zhou Cici was so excited that she didn't know what to say. Zhou Xian smiled bitterly. "You're just a little girl who doesn't know the rules." Lu Yin laughed. "I didn't expect you to grow so big in the blink of an eye. You'll be able to get married in a few years, huh?" Zhou Cici immediately shouted, "I'm not getting married. I want to enter your academy and step into the heavens." Zhou Xian felt a headache coming on. Lu Yin leaned forward and looked at Zhou Cici. "Why do you want to step into the heavens?" Zhou Cici clenched her fists. "I want to fight alongside you. You're alone every time we fight. It's too lonely." Lu Yin was stunned. "Lonely?" Zhou Xian fiercely twisted Zhou Cici's ear. "Shut up. You're not allowed to talk about adult matters. Alright, you can leave now. I still have things to discuss with your Uncle Lu." Zhou Cici rolled her eyes. "Forget it. Do you think Uncle Lu cares about that? It's just a sesame seed." Zhou Xian was speechless. An hour later, Lu Yin walked out of Jinling Military Academy and laughed. Was he lonely? Now that he thought about it, it was true. Most of the time he had been fighting alone. The world of adults was complicated, but a child's world was pure and could see things more clearly. He hadn't expected that his situation would be pointed out by a child. There was nothing he could do about it. Whatever he did, he had to bear the consequences. Loneliness was something he had to experience. He thought of Ming Yan and raised his hand to activate his gadget. A majestic amount of rune lines flashed past the corner of his eye. Lu Yin abruptly turned around and looked to his right. Since the school was still in session, there weren't many people around. Lu Yin immediately saw an old man walk past and he stared at the old man. Those rune lines had definitely come from him. Those rune lines belonged to an enlighter at the very least. Earth had actually attracted an enlighter. Lu Yin retracted his aura and slowly followed behind the old man. The old man didn't notice Lu Yin's presence and simply walked around Jinling Military Academy. As the students walked out in an orderly fashion, the old man silently followed behind them. Lu Yin frowned. All of the students had left? Shouldn't they be in school at this time? As an enlighter, the old man simply followed behind the group of students. Lu Yin followed behind them at a leisurely pace. The group of students quickly boarded a large flywheel under the school's arrangements. The army cleared a path for them as they headed towards the largest sports plaza in the city center of Jinling. The old man followed them on the ground and each step he took covered a kilometer. He walked very slowly, but it was as if he had staggered through space. Lu Yin did the same and no one on earth noticed this. Zhou Xian sat on the flywheel with his daughter, Zhou Xian, beside him. Cici, remember, don't tell anyone about Uncle Lu's appearance, Zhou Xian warned. Zhou Cici replied, I know. He's not a child. Be more careful, Zhou Xian grumbled. Dad, why did Goddess Luo come to Earth to perform? They probably can't pay her much, so she can't earn much. Do you think they only want to earn money? Earth's position in the universe is too special. This is your Uncle Lu's hometown, and everyone wants to settle down here to establish a relationship with him. Some want money while others want fame. That means this Goddess Luo is pretty smart. Zhou Xian looked ahead with a complicated expression. Goddess Luo? Goddess Luo? He had met her once before and he knew about her relationship with Bai Shui. He also knew that she had feelings for Lu Yin. This woman wasn't here for fame, but rather because this was Lu Yin's hometown. She wanted to get closer to him. In his eyes, Goddess Luo was a true goddess. She was resplendent, beautiful, and dazzling. Unfortunately, Lu Yin's status was too high, and he could find any woman he wanted. Zhou Xian wouldn't be able to see the results of his weight. Goddess Luo was the most dazzling star in the Outerverse, and her performance would cause a sensation in any region, let alone Earth. Earth was too small, and Jinling Stadium was so small that most people couldn't even buy a ticket. Those who could buy a ticket were either rich people from the Outerverse or had a special status. Half of the stadium was occupied by students from Jinling Military Academy, and since these students didn't collect tickets, this dance performance was destined to not make any money. Goddess Luo had already performed this dance many times on Earth, and she was very persistent. The old man followed the students to the stadium and easily entered. Lu Yin looked at Goddess Luo's image in shock. Why had she come to Earth? Why was she holding a dance performance? Was there anyone on Earth who could afford tickets? Was there a place for these people to watch? Lu Yin knew that Goddess Luo's every performance in the Outerverse would attract at least a few 100 million people. Even in a place like Xenu Star where the rich were everywhere, her performance would still attract a few 100,000 people. On Earth, there shouldn't be anyone who could afford a ticket to Goddess Luo's dance performance. But these students had actually managed to enter. Lu Yin easily entered the stadium and stared at the old man the entire time. On the other side, a young man was wearing a hat and sucking on a straw as he sauntered into the stadium. His eyes were glued to Luo Xin's enormous projection as he mumbled, "She's really beautiful. No wonder she's the Outerverse's most dazzling star. Dad, your son has brought you a beautiful daughter-in-law." The stadium was packed, and the atmosphere reached its peak with Goddess Luo's appearance. Everyone was cheering. Goddess Luo was a national idol, and her dance was enough to dazzle the heavens. The next volume is about to begin. Astral Tree, thank you, brothers, for your support. Chapter 1346. In the crowd, Switching Day-Night looked around from time to time. From the very beginning he had a feeling that he was being watched, but it was a vague feeling that made him uncertain. Logically speaking, he was an enlighter with a power level of 360,000, so there shouldn't be anyone who could watch him in such a remote place without him noticing. So, where was this feeling coming from? He had come out this time to look for Lu Xiaoga. Before the Sovereign Tournament had begun, the Day-Night clan had sent people to the Outerverse to look for Lu Xiaoga, but they had not been able to find him. Switching Day-Night had no choice but to go out personally. The inheritance stone was too important to the Day-Night clan, and they could not afford to lose it. The Outerverse was Lu Yin's territory, and even with a power level of 300,000 he did not dare to reveal his identity. He had used his star energy to sweep through the academy in an attempt to find Lu Xiaoga, but he had not been able to find him. Earth was Lu Xiaoga's home and he firmly believed that Lu Xiaoga would return sooner or later. Switching Day-Night decided to stay on Earth and wait for Lu Xiaoga. He could not use his star energy to cover the entire planet, so he could only go to a crowded area and wait for Lu Yin to show up. It was a little tiring, but it was safer and would not be discovered. Switching Day-Night's eyes trembled as he realized that someone was watching him. He looked around and wondered who it was. At this moment he was certain that an expert had appeared. "Hey, make way, make way." The young man in the hat squeezed his way to Switching Day-Night's side with great difficulty. Switching Day-Night's eyes narrowed and a murderous glint flashed through his eyes. The young man placed a hand on Switching Day-Night's shoulder, and Switching Day-Night clenched his fist. "Brother, make way." The young man pushed Switching Day-Night, but he did not move. He looked at Switching Day-Night in shock. "Old man, you're still chasing after celebrities at your age? You're really hardworking." Switching Day-Night took a step back. The young man smiled brightly. "Thank you." He held his straw in his mouth and continued to squeeze forward. Switching Day-Night frowned as he watched the young man's figure disappear. He looked around again, but he did not see who was watching him. He had been guarding the ancestral land's stone tablet for too long, and he had forgotten to be vigilant. He left the stadium without hesitation and even left Earth. He had to wait for that feeling to disappear before returning, or else he would not be at ease. Suddenly that feeling intensified tenfold. He turned around and saw a young man. It was Lu Yin. Switching Day-Night's pupils shrank when he saw Lu Yin's appearance, but it only lasted for an instant before he quickly regained his composure. He had disguised himself, so it was impossible to tell that he was from the Day-Night clan. Furthermore, he had not met Lu Yin during the battle at Night King Planet, so Lu Yin should not have recognized him. "Where are you from?" Lu Yin asked as he stared at Switching Day-Night. Switching Day-Night tried his best to look as gentle as possible as he smiled. "This old man is wandering the universe and I don't have a fixed place to stay." "Is that so? Why have you come to Earth?" Lu Yin asked. Switching Day-Night smiled. "I was just passing by and heard that Hero Lua was performing a dance, so I decided to take a look." "Then why are you following the students?" Switching Day-Night's eyes flashed. "I want to find an outstanding child to inherit my legacy." Lu Yin grunted. This junior believes that his aptitude is not bad. "Why don't you pass on your mantle to this junior? I'm willing to take care of you when you're old." Switching Day-Night laughed. "Little brother, you must be joking. Even this old man can't see through your strength. Don't make fun of me." Lu Yin's face darkened. "I don't want anyone to take Earth. You're here on Earth for fun and your origins are unknown and you're even following the students. How can I let you leave without worry?" Switching Day-Night frowned. "Little brother, aren't you being too overbearing? I'm just passing by Earth and I haven't harmed anyone. I'm only following the students because I want to find a disciple. I don't have any ill intentions. Are you going to attack me just because of this? Is Earth off limits to strangers?" Lu Yin stared at Switching Day-Night. "Explain your origins and you can enter. You didn't enter through normal means, did you?" Switching Day-Night's eyes flashed as he met Lu Yin's gaze. After a while he nodded. "It seems like you don't plan on letting me leave peacefully. Since that's the case, you can investigate." Lu Yin's gaze relaxed and he smiled. "Excuse me, sir. Please." Switching Day-Night returned to Earth under Lu Yin's supervision. Lu Yin had only wanted to investigate Switching Day-Night's origins, but he didn't know what the old man's goal was. Perhaps it was just as the old man had said, and Switching Day-Night wanted to find a disciple. There were too many independent cultivators in the universe, but of course, it was easy for an enlighter to find a disciple, which was what Lu Yin was most suspicious of. However, as long as Switching Day-Night wasn't hostile towards Earth, Lu Yin wouldn't do anything to him. Switching Day-Night landed on Earth in Jinling Stadium, where Goddess Luo's dance was still ongoing. Switching Day-Night slowly descended and suddenly his star energy erupted as he tore through the void and charged towards the stadium. Lu Yin's eyes went wide. He was courting death. He had dared to let the old man return to Earth because the old man's power level was at most 300,000, and he also had his emptiness palm and Day Knight's tribute, so he wasn't afraid of the old man. Switching Day Knight stepped into the stadium and appeared in front of Goddess Luo. Even the audience couldn't react in time. Lu Yin's spiritual force descended, and it was Day Knight's tribute. Switching Day Knight had seen Lu Yin's performance in the Sovereign Tournament, and he was extremely wary of Lu Yin. When Lu Yin's spiritual force descended, Switching Day Knight's spiritual force also erupted. It was nightfall. Lu Yin was shocked. Someone from the Day Knight clan? Furthermore, the rune lines had exceeded 300,000. This wasn't good. Switching Day Knight's spiritual force battle technique was strong enough to resist Day Knight's tribute, but he would definitely be dragged into the illusion. However, with his power level and the fact that he had been guarding the ancestral land stone steel, it was as if he had been petrified while cultivating his spiritual force. He wasn't much weaker than Zhou Xian's spiritual force. The moment Switching Day Knight was dragged into the illusion, he broke out of it in a single breath. Although a single breath had passed in the outside world, a considerable amount of time had passed within the illusion. Switching Day Knight had been subjected to the Night King heaven-splitting technique multiple times, and his brain had been concussed while blood flowed out of his orifices. Fortunately, he had broken out of the illusion. He hadn't expected Lu Yin's spiritual force attack to be so terrifying. That must be the Night King heaven-splitting technique. He recalled a legend that no one in the Day Knight clan had been able to cultivate this technique after the Day King and the first Night King had died. It was no wonder why Lu Yin's spiritual force was able to resist Zhou Xian's attacks. Switching Day Knight, who specialized in spiritual force, had almost been unable to withstand Lu Yin's attacks. In the entire Day Knight clan, no one below the level of an emissary could resist Lu Yin's spiritual force. A single breath was enough for Switching Day Knight to capture Luotian. Similarly, a single breath was enough for Lu Yin as well. Lu Yin's palm moved, and an emptiness palm traversed the void and viciously slammed into Switching Day Knight's back. Switching Day Knight's physical body could not withstand the might of the emptiness palm, even if it was not imbued with 9-lined battle force. He spat out a mouthful of blood as invisible fragments fell from his back and clothes. They were power vessels that he had used to withstand Lu Yin's emptiness palm. He then raised his hand and grabbed at Luotian, his fingers only a few centimeters away from her. Lu Yin was confident in his own strength, and he believed that he could control the situation. Switching Day Knight was cunning, and he had guarded against Lu Yin's various methods. In the end, Switching Day Knight had still managed to win a chance for survival. As long as he could capture Luotian, he could force Lu Yin to release him and allow him to return to the Day Knight flow zone. He had not expected a youth like Lu Yin to be so terrifying. Even though he had guarded against Lu Yin to the extreme, he had still been heavily injured. His spiritual force had been scattered, and his brain had roared as blood flowed out of his orifices. His body had also been torn apart by the emptiness palm. Fortunately, he had succeeded. This woman was his only chance at survival. Switching Day Knight saw Luotian's terrified gaze as she drew closer and closer. Behind them, the star chessboard appeared beneath Lu Yin's feet. Just as he was about to move Luotian, a youth wearing a hat walked out from beside her with a straw in his mouth. The youth did not seem to move at all, but Switching Day Knight touched him. Then there was a thunderous explosion that connected the heavens and the earth, tearing apart space itself. Lu Yin's pupils shrank. He had seen many lightning-type battle techniques or attacks from experts with innate lightning-type abilities, but this was the most terrifying attack he had ever seen. The rune lines had exceeded 400,000. And even Lu Yin felt a sense of danger. The youth had a smile on his face and he had a handsome appearance. His hat was tilted to one side and he was surrounded by lightning. Switching Day Knight had clearly been very close to Luotian, but the moment this youth appeared, it was as if he had drawn so close, yet worlds apart. When the lightning disappeared, Switching Day Knight's body was charred black and he collapsed to the ground. He had been electrocuted into a lump of charcoal. The youth flicked the straw in his mouth and turned to face Luotian. He flashed a smile that he thought was very charming. "I'm Jiangqin. Nice to meet you, beautiful." Luotian's body disappeared as Lu Yin had used the plan to teleport her to his side. She was pleasantly surprised when she saw Lu Yin. "Your Highness." Lu Yin nodded and looked at the youth called Jiangqin. Jiang Chen looked back at Lu Yin with a smile on his face. His eyes were bright, but there was also a domineering aura about him. His temperament was calm and he made people feel at ease just by standing there. He gave Lu Yin the same feeling as when he had first met Wu Taibai. He was casual, free and unrestrained, but there was an indescribable feeling about him. Lu Yin didn't know how to describe that feeling. In any case, he didn't dislike this person. I've seen you before. The competition was very exciting. Jiang Chen smiled happily as he looked Lu Yin in the eye. Lu Yin looked deeply at Jiang Chen. Thank you. May I ask where you're from? Earth, Jiang Chen said directly, but then he felt that something was off. Not far from Earth. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. This person's words didn't match his heart. He had clearly said that he was from Earth, but there was no way Earth could have produced such an expert. Was this Jiang Chen from the Earth Hidden Realm? That was very likely. Jiang Chen jumped off the stage, and the surrounding lights shone on Switching Day Knight's charred body. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go somewhere else, Lu Yin said. Jiang Chen didn't mind. He looked at Luotian expectantly. Together. Luotian gently replied, I want to finish the dance. Jiang Chen was disappointed. Lu Yin said, she'll come after the dance. Let's find a place to talk. Jiang Chen waved a hand. It doesn't matter. A new volume is coming soon. Thank you for your support, brothers. Chapter 1347. Switching Day Knight's appearance caused the dance to stop for a moment, but order was quickly restored. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened on Earth. Even though Goddess Luo had been in danger, the situation had been resolved. Lu Yin had hidden his appearance the moment he appeared in the stadium, so no one had been able to see him clearly. As a result, he hadn't caused a stir. There weren't many people in the leisurely cafe, as most of them had gathered around the stadium. Although they couldn't enter the stadium to see Goddess Luo, there were still screens outside that played the entire performance. Soft music echoed throughout the cafe. Jiang Chen took out his straw and twirled it between his fingers as he watched Goddess Luo on a screen in the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Across from him, Lu Yin asked, Do you like Goddess Luo a lot? Jiang Chen casually replied, Can't help it. It's time for me to get married. Mom's been urging me. You want to marry her? Lu Yin asked. Jiang Chen retracted his gaze and looked at Lu Yin. Maybe. Why, do you have any other ideas? Lu Yin was speechless, not knowing how to continue the conversation. Jiang Chen took a sip of coffee. Speaking of which, it's not bad to drink coffee while looking at your own statue. There's also a lot of people kneeling and praying. Lu Yin looked into the distance and saw a huge statue towering into the clouds. It was his own statue, which could be found in many places on Earth. It was a landmark in many cities, and it wasn't just on Earth. Many planets in Frostwave we've had similar statues. It was a strange feeling. Looking at others kneeling and praying to him gave him the illusion that he was already dead. Your lightning is very powerful. Is it a talent? Lu Yin asked. Jiang Chen stirred his coffee. You can say that. With a powerful father, you're pretty powerful, especially that transformation in the last round of the Sovereign Tournament. Jiang Chen's eyes lit up as he looked at Lu Yin. That transformation was really cool. How did you cultivate it? Lu Yin shook his head. I don't know either. I just cultivated it. Jiang Chen obviously didn't believe him, but it wasn't appropriate for him to ask too much about this battle technique. He suddenly thought of something. Have you seen a rabbit with lightning? Lu Yin was startled. Have? Jiang Chen pursed his lips. I'm asking you. Lu Yin nodded. Yes. That rabbit appeared on the Savage Ape planet and stomped a savage ape to death. Then it appeared in Ironblood Weave and stomped on Elder Nua. Jiang Chen rubbed his chin. That damned rabbit sure can run, but it won't be too far away from Earth. You're looking for that rabbit? Lu Yin asked curiously. Jiang Chen nodded. That's right. If you have any news, you must tell me. I'll stay on Earth. Are you staying on Earth to wait for that rabbit? Jiang Chen hummed in agreement. That's the main reason. We have to catch that rabbit, otherwise it'll cause trouble everywhere. Then why stay on Earth? Maybe that rabbit has already run far away. That's impossible. That dead rabbit can't be too far away from Earth. The furthest it could be would be in the Outerverse. It's so homesick. How strong is that rabbit? Jiang Chen thought for a moment. I don't know. You don't know. Lu Yin felt that something was off. Jiangchen was vexed. There are countless parallel dimensions in the universe and the flow of time is different for each of them. Maybe that rabbit has cultivated for tens of thousands of years more than others in one of the parallel dimensions. Who knows if he will rise? It's not that easy to travel through parallel dimensions, is it? Lu Yin didn't believe him. Jiangchen shook his finger. That's you. That rabbit fought with my father before and it has the ability to travel through parallel dimensions. That's why we have to catch it or it'll be a disaster in the future. It's already a disaster for Elder Nuohua, Lu Yin thought. Brother Jiang, do you know anything about Jupiter? Lu Yin suddenly asked, staring into Jiang Chen's eyes. Jiang Chen was puzzled. Jupiter? He looked beyond Earth, his gaze piercing through the stars until he saw a huge planet. It's just an ordinary planet. Why are you bringing it up? Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This planet isn't ordinary. I can't enter it. He suspected that Jiang Chen was from the Hidden Earth Society, and Jupiter was his test. Jiang Chen was intrigued. Even you can't enter? Are you joking with me? It's just a planet. Lu Yin frowned. Jiang Chen didn't seem to be acting strangely, as if he really didn't know anything. Could it be that he had nothing to do with the Hidden Earth Society? I really can't enter. Brother Jiang, do you want to explore it together? There's still some time before Goddess Luo's performance ends, Lu Yin invited. Jiang Chen nodded. Sure. I'm bored anyway. Let's have some fun. Lu Yin gave Jiang Chen a deep look. Either this person really had nothing to do with the Hidden Earth Society, or his acting skills were too good. Regardless of which it was, Lu Yin couldn't ignore this person. He didn't look old, but he possessed such terrifying strength. He definitely wasn't an ordinary person, and it was even more unusual for him to appear on Earth and intend to stay there. Soon, the two left Earth and stepped into outer space, heading towards Jupiter's monitoring station. In the Neoverse, there was a forgotten land known as the Black Realm, also known as the Black Street. This was the Neoverse's garbage terminal. Every day, countless amounts of the universe's garbage would be sent here. Some of it would be processed and some would be recycled. The garbage referred to here wasn't just the waste from cultivation, but also living creatures such as humans and astral beasts. The Black Street was rarely mentioned in the new universe, as if the mere mention of its name was disgusting. This place was filled with the dark side of the new universe, and those who lived here couldn't see the light of day. Everything had light, but there was also darkness. The southern boundary of the new universe was the darkest place because the 7 courts were gathered there. The Black Street was also a dark place, as it gathered the dark sides of countless great figures who didn't want to see the light of day. It also preserved the dark sides of many great figures. Many people would unintentionally throw away trash here, and this trash might very well contain some information. The Black Street had people who specialized in handling such information, and it was easy to extract useful information. Although it was a terminal of trash, the Black Street's ability to collect and sell trash analysis information wasn't small. On the contrary, many people were apprehensive of it. Brothels were one of the Black Street's businesses. It was ironic that an organization that roped in all the major powers and produced many beautiful women had originated from a terminal of trash. The master of the Black Street was one of the 9 directors of the Hall of Honor, the Ageless Man. Many people were apprehensive of the Ageless Man because there were many interests behind him, and these interests were linked by the Black Street. At this moment, the Ageless Man was lying on the ground, his entire body trembling. His skin had become loose and his hair was gradually turning white. His eyes revealed extreme fear and regret. Young Master Tian was lying on the ground next to him, unconscious. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Thump, thump, thump. The Ageless Man, he looked up and saw a beautiful woman with a similar head of white hair. She was looking at him with an icy gaze. I've heard so much about you, Mr. Director. The Ageless Man stared at the woman and said in a hoarse voice, You poisoned me with a life poison. The woman was Ming Yan, a white-haired Ming Yan. Mr. Director knows very well. The Ageless Man didn't reply. He just stared at the woman and angrily yelled, Why did the Neo-Human Alliance attack me? I've always been loyal to the Neo-Human Alliance and I even risked my life to find out the location of the node. I'm the Ageless Man and I've left my name in eternity. I'm one of your people and you shouldn't have attacked me. The white-haired Ming Yan looked down at the Ageless Man. She had used young Master Tian to lure the Ageless Man back and then poisoned him. The poison of life was so terrifying that even young Master Tian's protector, who had a power level of over 400,000, had been poisoned, let alone the ageless man. She had only wanted to take control of the Black Street and then contact Lu Yin to give him this gift, but she had not expected to receive such important information. The ageless man was actually a member of the Neo-Human Alliance and a traitor of the Hall of Honor. He was one of the 9 directors, and his status was so high that even powerhouses with power levels in the millions had to respect him. This gift was becoming more and more valuable, and Ming Yan was looking forward to it. She wondered what Lu Yin's gift would be like. At the same time, she felt a sense of urgency. The ageless man was a member of the Neo-Human Alliance, which meant that he could contact the Neo-Human Alliance. The poison of life originated from the Neo-Human Alliance, and if she could poison him, then the Neo-Human Alliance might be able to neutralize it. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became. Ming Yan stared coldly at the ageless man and deliberately said, "Taking control of the Black Street is an order. You're no longer of any value." The ageless man panted heavily as he glared at Ming Yan. "I don't believe you. I'm a director of the Hall of Honor. How can I be worthless?" Ming Yan coldly replied, "You've already lost to Lu Yin, so why are you still of any value? Your hypocritical side has already been exposed, and you won't be able to get any useful information in the future." "I don't believe you. I want to contact the Eternal Kingdom. Give me back my gadget. I want to contact Mr. Feng." The ageless man struggled. Ming Yan's eyes flashed and she took out her gadget and tossed it to him. The ageless man hurriedly opened his gadget and accessed a secret network, but it was suddenly snatched away by Ming Yan. Ming Yan stared at the network and saw a string of people she had contacted. One of them was the so-called Mr. Feng. "What are you doing?" The ageless man roared. "I have information for Mr. Feng. As long as he listens to my information, he'll definitely save me. I'm still of value, so he wants me to contact Mr. Feng." Ming Yan frowned as she stared at the people she had contacted. Every one of them had a note, and Mr. Feng was noted as a butler. The others all had their own notes, and almost all of them were names that she had never heard of before. Suddenly, her eyes narrowed as she saw a person named Lu who was noted as Jupiter. Jupiter. She had heard of it before. Lu Yin had mentioned a planet called Earth and the planets that orbited it, and one of them was called Jupiter. It couldn't be a coincidence, right? There were too many planets with that name in the universe. She pointed at Lu's name and purposely asked, "You still dare to contact him? This is an order that Mr. Feng gave me. Once Lu Yin returns to Earth, he suddenly paused and looked up at Ming Yan. "You're not from the Neo-Human Alliance," he bellowed. "You're not from the Neo-Human Alliance." Ming Yan had already confirmed that this Jupiter was Earth's Jupiter, and that there were people from the Neo-Human Alliance there. Not good, she had to tell Lu Yin immediately. Chapter 1348. Who are you? Why do you have the Neo-Human Alliance's life poison? The old man shouted hoarsely. Ming Yan casually knocked him out and immediately called Lu Yin. She already knew how to contact Lu Yin, but she had been unable to contact him because she had been on Shenwu continent. After leaving Shenwu continent, she had been worried that he would be worried. Later, she had been captured by a brothel and had been unable to contact the outside world. Now she had to contact him. Fortunately, the old man's gadget was specially provided. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to contact the innerverse or outerverse. Lu Yin should be in the innerverse or outerverse right now. In the outerverse, outside of Earth, Lu Yin and Xianxia stood at Jupiter's monitoring station, looking at the giant planet in front of them and listening to its unique sounds. "You really can't go in?" Xianxia asked. Lu Yin shook his head. "If I could, I would have done so long ago. Why don't you give it a try?" Xianxia curled his lips. "You go first." He wasn't stupid, and who knew if it would be dangerous. His father had taught him to be cautious. Lu Yin saw that this man didn't seem to know much about Jupiter. Could he really not be from Hidden Earth? Lu Yin looked at Jupiter and called for the station's commander. The commander was a rough man who had reached the Hunter realm. His name was Alu. "Alu greets your highness." Lu Yin grunted in acknowledgement and then glanced at Alu, who looked rather familiar. He asked, "Has anyone approached Jupiter recently?" Alu respectfully replied, "No." Lu Yin looked at Jupiter with a deep gaze. At that moment his gadget rang. He glanced at it and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. He wanted to reject the call, but after some thought he decided against it. Anyone who could contact him wasn't an ordinary person, so he accepted the call. The white-haired Ming Yan's voice rang out. Luin, there's someone called Alu from Earth's Jupiter. He's from the Neo-Human Alliance. Luin heard it, Jiang Chen heard it, and even Alu, who was standing respectfully behind them, heard it as well. No one would have thought that all three of them would hear it at the same time. Alu's gaze suddenly turned deathly still as he looked up at Luin. Lu Yin's mind raced as he looked at Alu. He remembered that this person was Baruda, the commander of Gemma Space Station. When they had first left Earth for the Great Yu Empire, they had passed by Gemma Space Station, and the station's commander, Baruda, had communicated with Sigmund Mathers. Because of this, Sigmund Mathers had been arrested on charges of colluding with the Neo-Human Alliance as soon as he had arrived at Xenu Star. He didn't expect this person to be here. Subconsciously, the star-scattered chessboard appeared under his feet, enclosing Jiang Chen within it. Then Baruda made his move. Vaguely, a strange and gloomy doll appeared in Lu Yin's eyes. Lu Yin's pupils shrunk. It was the Divine Witch Spirit doll. Following that, everything in front of him changed. His vision shifted to the back of his hand and his sense of smell shifted to his legs. His mind was in a mess. Fortunately, the plan secret had moved and he brought Jiang Chen out of the space station. On the other side, Jiang Chen's body crackled with thunder as he felt an extreme sense of crisis. Baruda's strength increased by several levels, reaching the Enlighter realm. 300,000, 400,000, and even 500,000 as he ferociously charged forward. He only had Lu Yin in his eyes, as Lu Yin was a target that the Neo-Human Alliance had to kill. Given the distance between Lu Yin and Baruda's combat strength, this distance was practically non-existent. Baruda wasn't relying on his own strength, but rather the Divine Witch Spirits. The Divine Witch Spirit had used greater spatial teleportation to attack Lu Yin. Even if the sacred Heavenly Master reacted, he wouldn't be able to save Lu Yin in an instant. Lu Yin's five senses were in a mess and he couldn't do anything. Jiang Chen transformed into a sword of lightning and blocked Baruda's path. Baruda, or rather the Divine Witch Spirit, hadn't expected Jiang Chen to dare block his path. He didn't care about this ant and he casually pointed a finger at Jiang Chen, intending to eliminate him. However, his finger missed and Jiang Chen actually vanished without a trace. Lu Yin shifted his hearing to the bottom of his feet, and he heard Jiang Chen's last words, "Take care of yourself, my friend." The Divine Witch Spirit was stunned by the fact that Jiang Chen had actually disappeared right in front of his eyes. Not even an emissary could do such a thing. While he was stunned, the sacred Heavenly Master appeared, and his majestic strength collided with the Divine Witch Spirit. Enormous shockwaves swept out, obliterating the void and causing the universe's starry sky to visibly collapse. This was the strength of a half-step ancestor. Lu Yin was swept away by the enormous shockwaves, but fortunately, the sacred Heavenly Master casually intercepted most of the shockwaves. Lu Yin was only pushed back and he was sent flying towards Jupiter. When he saw the sacred Heavenly Master's attack, Lu Yin knew that he had been saved. That had been a close call, and if not for Ming Yan's warning, he would have used the plan's secret art to teleport away in time. After stabilizing himself, Lu Yin looked into the distance. The sacred Heavenly Master had appeared, so he was safe. Suddenly, a huge suction force came from behind him. He turned around and saw the enormous Jupiter, and then his body was sucked into the planet without any resistance. This unforeseen event stunned both the sacred Heavenly Master and the Divine Witch Spirit. The sacred Heavenly Master subconsciously tried to grab Lu Yin, but the moment he got close to Jupiter, he felt an indescribable sense of danger and promptly withdrew his hand. The Divine Witch Spirit let out a strange laugh, and the doll disappeared while Baruda's body exploded, turning into cosmic dust. Just like that, Lu Yin disappeared from Jupiter. The last thing he thought of before he disappeared was Mr. Mu, as he had yet to be rewarded for being the champion of the Sovereign Tournament. When the Hall of Honor's Elder Chan learned of this news, he unexpectedly sent the sacred Heavenly Master back and sealed off Jupiter's surroundings to prevent any news of Lu Yin from spreading. Lu Yin's place in the top 10 was replaced by Lu Tianmu. Starsabil, who was supposed to replace Wang Yi, had suddenly declined, and the technocracy had not sent anyone to replace Wang Yi either. The Hall of Honor had finally decided to send someone else to replace Wang Yi. Lu Yin's disappearance affected the entire situation. He was involved in too many benefits, and the most obvious one was the Great Eastern Alliance. He also had many enemies. With him around, no one could touch him, but without him, everything that he had once possessed could be coveted by others. The most obvious ones were the powers of the Innerverse 8 Great Flow Zones, and all of them looked towards the Great Eastern Alliance. It was only a planet that had been sucked away by Jupiter. Logically speaking, nothing should have happened to Lu Yin, as he could easily destroy such a planet. However, the Hall of Honor's reaction made it clear that Lu Yin would not appear again. Otherwise, his place in the top 10 would not have been taken so quickly. All of this could only mean one thing: Lu Yin would not return. Even the sacred Heavenly Master had not been able to bring him back. The blazing mist flow zones, Sylvan Dragons, and the Ross Empire even began to gather their forces. They would not touch Lu Yin's friends and family, as he had Leon's Armada and Master Yuan behind him. It would be troublesome to touch them, but the Great Eastern Alliance would definitely crumble. Across the Outerverse 72 weaves, the powers at the helm of the various weaves were all in a state of panic. However, just as some people were about to make a move, the Hall of Honor and the Interstellar Supreme Court sent out a message. The Inquisitor had ordered that the Innerverse and Outerverse were not to start a war and that everything would remain the same. No one was to act rashly, or it would be a declaration of war against the Interstellar Supreme Court. This news shook the entire universe. The Interstellar Supreme Court was a judicial organization that had never intervened in the disputes between the Innerverse and Outerverse powers. This time, however, they had taken a stand to protect everything that Lu Yin owned, which was somewhat inconceivable. Lu Yin already had many powerhouses supporting him, and an existence like Master Yuan had made it so that the Innerverse did not dare to touch Lu Yin's friends and family. Now, even the Interstellar Supreme Court had stepped in. This left the Innerverse and Outerverse powers speechless. How could Lu Yin's disappearance still have such a huge impact? What was Lu Yin's relationship with the Inquisitor? Even Lu Yin himself did not know why the Inquisitor was so supportive of him, as this went against the Interstellar Supreme Court's rules. Despairing Mu immediately sought out the Inquisitor, but it was to no avail. The Inquisitor was determined to protect everything that Lu Yin owned. However, Lu Yin did not know any of this at the moment, as he had already lost consciousness. The dark blue waters stretched far into the distance, and strange seabirds occasionally flew across the sky, chirping softly. Above the surface of the sea, a ship was sailing in a certain direction. It was not large and its hull was covered in scars. It was obvious that it had been through a battle and some of the scars were still fresh. On the deck, a valiant middle-aged man stared into the distance with a deep gaze. He seemed to be thinking about something and his fingers were subconsciously tapping. Behind him, an old man walked over with a terrified expression. His eyes were filled with sorrow and confusion about the future. Mr. Zhou, can we really succeed? If this matter is exposed, we won't be able to survive. The middle-aged man turned around and stared at the old man. What are you afraid of? Your old life should have ended with your young master a few days ago. I was the one who pulled you up and I've already considered everything. The old man trembled and looked back at the cabin. But what if that young man wakes up? Is he willing? The middle-aged man with the surname Zhou sneered. Why wouldn't he be willing to become the son-in-law of the White Dragon clan's main bloodline? I'll just wait for him to wake up. The old man's body continued to tremble and he sighed and looked up. This was a strange place because above their heads in the boundless sky, there were stars shining brightly. Above the stars there was a blurry outline. There was an even higher land and people of even higher status lived there. Everyone called that place the top world. Looking out from the sea, one could see a rainbow that connected the heavens and the earth even though it was extremely far away. In a certain direction, there was a blurry wall-like existence that blocked one's vision. This was a strange world, the astral tree. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Yin vaguely heard someone say, "He's moving, the kid's moving. Quickly report this to Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou, the kid's moving. Be careful what you say, he's the 7th dragon." Yes, the 7th dragon. The 7th dragon is moving. He was attacked a few days ago and he was severely injured. Fortunately, he managed to survive. Everyone remember this. Even in your dreams, you can only call him the 7th dragon. Yes, Mr. Zhou. The voices quickly disappeared and Lu Yin could no longer hear them. The new volume has arrived. Thank you for your support, brothers. I've been thinking about this for a long time and I've lived up to your expectations. Thank you. Chapter 1349. There was both day and night in this space. The ocean at night was filled with danger and the ship wasn't very large. From time to time huge sea creatures would sweep past, threatening to overturn the ship at any moment. Only Mr. Zhou stood at the bow of the ship, chasing away the powerful sea creatures. Within the cabin, Lu Yin suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. His complicated thoughts pulled him back to the attack of the Neo-Human Alliance, Baruta, Zhongchen, the Witchling God, the High Sage Heavenly Master and Jupiter. Right, he had been sucked away by Jupiter. Where am I? A hand reached out in front of him. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold and he grabbed the hand before twisting it forcefully. There was a crack followed by a scream. Let go. Mr. Zhou, let go. Help. Mr. Zhou, Mr. Zhou. Shut up. Lu Yin barked as he pressed the person to the ground once more. The door opened and Lu Yin looked up. A group of people had rushed in, and he stared at the valiant middle-aged man at the very back. This person wasn't weak and Lu Yin's eyes turned into runes. He couldn't see any rune lines? No one could see any rune lines. Could this be the interior of Jupiter? Even if it was, there should be rune lines. The rune progenitor's power covered the entire fifth mainland. Unless this wasn't the fifth mainland, then where was this place? All of you leave, Mr. Zhou said, and everyone else retreated. The man who had been pressed to the ground by Lu Yin grimaced in pain. Mr. Zhou looked at Lu Yin and smiled. Little brother, you fell into the Zhongping Ocean. We were the ones who saved you. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed and he released his grip. He looked down at his body and frowned. He didn't have much star energy left and his meridians had been blocked. He wasn't injured, but he didn't know why. His body also had many external injuries and some of them looked sinister and terrifying, almost as if they had been cut open. His injuries seemed serious and he was in a lot of pain, but these were just minor injuries to him. Fortunately, he still had his cosmic ring, and as long as he took out the healing pills inside, he would be able to recover in a few days. His blocked meridians weren't a big problem either. With his cosmic ring, he could take out his universal armor at any time, and he wouldn't have any problems protecting himself. When he thought to this point, he relaxed considerably. Sorry, he said before releasing his grip. The man hurriedly stood up and fearfully glanced at Lu Yin before retreating. Mr. Zhou was accompanied by an elder. Lu Yin looked at them. Thank you for saving me. Mr. Zhou smiled. You're welcome. It was fate that brought us together. My name is Zhou Xian and I'm an explorer who belongs to the roots. Lu Yin replied, He was just about to say his real name but then decided against it. I'm Qi, a wandering cultivator. Zhou Xian's eyes flashed and he smiled. Brother 7 is a rogue cultivator? That doesn't seem to be the case. Although I can't see your cultivation level, your physical strength isn't bad. It doesn't seem like something a rogue cultivator can cultivate. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. I accidentally ate some natural treasures. Zhou Xian smiled. I know the hardships of being a rogue cultivator. Brother 7, you should rest well. I won't disturb you any longer. Lu Yin really wanted to know where this place was, but he wasn't a hothead and couldn't ask. This person had a valiant appearance and seemed simple and honest, but he gave off a treacherous vibe. Lu Yin grew wary. Thank you, Mr. Zhou. Zhou Xian nodded and left with the old man. From the beginning to the end, the old man had not said a single word. When they left the cabin, the old man grew anxious. Mr. Zhou, why didn't you tell him? It won't take long for us to reach our destination. If he doesn't agree, won't we be dead for sure? Zhou Xian shook his head. I didn't plan on telling him now. That kid was evasive when he spoke and it was obvious that he was hiding something. Who knows where he came from? Then why did you let him impersonate my young master? The old man grew anxious. Zhou Xian stared at him sharply. What else can I do? Will you be able to survive in this dangerous middle plane realm? Not only will I not be paid, but I might even be hunted down by the White Dragon tribe. Neither of us can afford to take responsibility for that. Then what if we're exposed? The old man was terrified. Zhou Xian sneered. That's his problem. We'll be long gone by then. Bring him to his destination and you'll receive a large sum of money. I'll give you a special price when the time comes. Hire me to send you to a safe place so that you can enjoy the rest of your life. The old man gulped. He was still uneasy, but he couldn't say anything. Don't worry. That tube of blood has already been injected into his body, and the White Dragon Tribe's blood should be able to suppress his blood. When the time comes, the White Dragon Tribe's experts will appear, and that kid will have to cooperate even if he doesn't want to. Otherwise he'll die, and no one wants to die. What do you think? Zhou Xian's vicious gaze swept over the old man. The old man trembled. Yes. Lu Yin had wandered the universe for more than 10 years, and he was no longer a fledgling. Zhou Xian gave him a bad feeling, and he wanted to leave this ship as soon as possible. The next day, Lu Yin walked out of his cabin and saw an endless ocean. He saw a distant wall that seemed to block out another world, a rainbow that connected the heavens and the earth, and the blurry land above him. He was stunned. What was this place? As a cultivator who had wandered the universe for more than 10 years, Lu Yin had seen many strange places. Even so, this place still shocked him. Footsteps sounded behind him as Zhou Xian walked out. Lu Yin didn't show any signs of being unfamiliar with this place. He took a deep breath and stretched his arm. "Brother, your body recovers very quickly." Zhou Xian laughed heartily as he walked over to Lu Yin's side. Lu Yin smiled. "How thick-skinned. Mr. Zhou, where are we going?" Zhou Xian casually replied, "Not too far ahead." Lu Yin nodded. This was the vast ocean, and he didn't want to leave rashly. It would be best if he could walk on land. With his strength he could even travel through outer space, let alone the ocean. However, this was still an unfamiliar place, and it was best not to take too many risks. He looked up and saw the faint outline of land above him. This piece of land actually covered the sun and the stars. Could this be the interior of Jupiter? Zhou Xian saw that Lu Yin didn't like to talk, so he didn't say much. He calculated the time, and it was almost time. Lu Yin returned to his cabin and waited until nightfall. He raised his hand and his die appeared. He had to recover his body first, so he thought about it and placed his cosmic ring aside before rolling the die. The die slowly spun and quickly stopped. His luck was very good as he immediately obtained 4 pips. Lu Yin grabbed his cosmic ring, and the scene before him changed as he arrived at the time-stop space. He relaxed upon arriving and opened his cosmic ring to retrieve the ancient pills that had been upgraded. There were a total of 12 of these pills, and all of them had been upgraded to the point where their rune lines were close to that of an enlighter's. 3 of them had even been upgraded to the point where their rune lines neared 300,000. Lu Yin's power level was very high, and he could defeat an enlighter with a power level of over 400,000. However, he was only a hunter, so these pills were just right for him. He still had the pills that the Sirius sect elders had given him, and they were even useful for envoys. However, those pills were too effective, so there was no need for them. He immediately swallowed them, not caring if they were useful or not. The pills were quite effective when they entered his body, and the injuries on his body healed at a visible rate. His wounds began to itch, and his internal injuries were quickly recovering as well. However, his blocked meridians did not improve at all, and he didn't know how they had gotten blocked. Lu Yin wasn't in a hurry as he could recover for a long time in the time-stop space. He silently recited the Stonewall scriptures and practiced his other battle techniques. A month passed and his blocked meridians were much better. Lu Yin immediately absorbed the star essence to restore the star energy in his body. 2 months, 3 months and 5 months later, Lu Yin's star energy was completely restored. He let out a long sigh. As long as he recovered, he would be able to protect himself. With the defensive capabilities of his universal armor, he should be able to protect himself even in this strange place. The scene in front of him changed and Lu Yin returned to his cabin. He had been in the time-stop space for 5 months, but only an instant had passed here. He deliberately restrained his aura and suppressed his star energy as he did not want others to see through him. As the sky brightened, Lu Yin walked out and left the ship as soon as it docked. When he reached the deck, he looked up and saw that it was pitch black in the distance. It was a sign that a storm was approaching. Zhou Xian's face was solemn and he even looked a little unsightly. There were other people on the deck as well, and they all looked apprehensive and fearful. The elder saw Lu Yin walk out and hurriedly said, Little brother, you should return to your cabin. It's dangerous." Lu Yin did not ask any more questions as he was afraid that his questions would be too common and would be seen through. He turned around and returned to his cabin. Soon after, an indescribable sense of danger appeared, causing Lu Yin's scalp to go numb. He was not used to the Aeon evolution scripture not working, and his vigilance towards the outside world had decreased. He raised his hand and the star energy in the air trembled. Ordinary people would not be able to see it, but Lu Yin's control of star energy had reached the level of a world realm cultivator. He could clearly see that the star energy was actually disintegrating, and it was disintegrating faster and faster. A kind of power descended, and the appearance of this power caused Lu Yin's back to turn cold. He immediately donned his universal armor. In the distance, the black sky grew closer and closer. A roar shook the world, causing the seas to boil and the star energy to rapidly disintegrate. A violent hurricane swept past, causing the ship to bob up and down and almost capsize. Zhou Xian despaired, as this was indeed the power of an emissary. It was over. He was only an enlighter and he had no way of resisting an emissary. 4 enormous eyes appeared in the pitch-black sky, and they flickered with flames. Following that, an enormous creature flapped its flaming wings and evaporated the surface of the sea as it slowly descended. It was an incomparably enormous 2-headed beast that was no smaller than the Devourer during the Sovereign Tournament. Its 2 heads were raised high, and its 2 enormous claws flickered with cold light as they floated in the air. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This was the power of an emissary. He instinctively tried to check its power level, but he discovered that his gadget was gone. The air trembled and the seas boiled. Countless dead fish floated about as terrifying flames covered the sky, dyeing it red. Lu Yin's expression turned solemn. This power was no weaker than Red Lord's at his peak. Where exactly was this place? How could he encounter an emissary so casually? Wait, if this was an emissary, then this power should have been able to tear through the void. Lu Yin seemed to think of something and he casually waved his hand. From what he knew, this palm strike should have been able to slice through space, but in this place, it only sliced through the air and not the void. Chapter 1350. This space was much sturdier than the 5th mainlands, and even with his strength he could not tear through the void. To that envoy-level monster, this ship was even more insignificant than an ant. Zhou Xian and the rest watched in despair, hoping that the monster would not attack them. Zhou Xian hurriedly stabilized the ship and looked up to see one of the monster's heads descend, its mouth wide open as it tried to swallow them whole. Lu Yin's scalp went numb and he subconsciously tried to escape. Suddenly there was an angry shout. "Evil creature, back off." The pitch-black sky was sliced apart and sunlight poured down, illuminating the ship. Lu Yin had one foot on the ship's railing, but when he heard the shout, he retracted his foot and looked up to see the enormous and awe-inspiring monster howl as it landed on the surface of the sea. Its entire body slowly sank into the water, and its eyes were filled with grief. Even the flames that had been burning in the sky were extinguished. Lu Yin was stunned. This was an envoy-level powerhouse. Who was it trying to show its grief to? In the sky, a tall and sturdy man who was more than 2 meters tall stood there, his head lowered as he looked down at the ship. Zhou Xian and the rest hurriedly bowed. "Thank you, Senior, for saving our lives." The man's body flashed, and when he reappeared he was already on the ship. Behind him was the incomparably enormous monster that looked particularly terrifying. Lu Yin retreated to the cabin and watched the scene unfold. The man's gaze swept past Zhou Xian and the rest before settling on the elder. His gaze softened. "You're from the Dalian mountain branch, right?" The elder trembled and hurriedly knelt down. "The steward of the White Dragon tribe's Dalian mountain branch greets the elder." The man asked, "Did you bring him?" The elder was terrified and he saw Zhou Xian's pale face from the corner of his eye. I brought him. We were attacked along the way and the young master was injured. He's resting in the cabin." The man was delighted. "He's not dead." The elder trembled. "No, he's not dead." The man looked at the cabin excitedly. Lu Yin had already taken off his universal armor, as he did not want to attract attention. But why was this man looking at him like that? And why was the man looking at him like he was some kind of treasure? There was a problem and Lu Yin had to leave quickly even if there was danger outside. Not long after, the man left, but the enormous monster did not. Instead, it came to the bottom of the ship, lifted it and flew off in a certain direction. Lu Yin was shocked. Not good. How could he escape with this monster around? The universal armor could protect him from certain attacks, but it couldn't help him escape the pursuit of an emissary. There was a knock on the door and Lu Yin felt uneasy. "Come in." Zhou Xian and the old man came in. One had a smile on his face, while the other had a terrified expression. Little brother, how's your recovery? I didn't scare you, did I? Zhou Xian smiled happily. Lu Yin forced a smile. No. By the way, what happened? Where are we going? He couldn't care less about being exposed and hurriedly asked. Zhou Xian smiled. Let's go to the White Dragon tribe's middle realm. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Judging from Zhou Xian's expression, the so-called White Dragon tribe was definitely very famous, and Lu Yin should know about it, but he didn't dare to ask. What are you going there for? Can you put this junior down first? Junior will take his leave. I still have matters to attend to. Zhou Xian looked at him with a smile. Little brother, I'm a wise man. In other words, your opportunity has arrived. Lu Yin was taken aback and his gaze turned cold. A stranger saying such things for no reason definitely didn't have good intentions. What do you mean? Zhou Xian glanced at the old man. The old man helplessly replied, Little brother, you saw the Lord just now. He's an elder of the White Dragon tribe and he's a powerhouse. The monster below is his mount. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. So what? What does that have to do with me? The White Dragon tribe recently announced to all branches that all males within the tribe must report to White Mountain. We are one of the branches, but we were ambushed on the way here and the young master died. Now little brother, you are the young master of our White Dragon tribe's Lianshan branch, Long 7, the old man slowly explained. Lu Yin's eyes widened and he looked at the old man in confusion. Zhou Xian continued, the White Dragon tribe has strict rules, and anyone who fails to report on time will be severely punished. Since the young master was killed, all of us will be charged with failing to protect him. This is a serious crime. Is that why you want me to impersonate him? Lu Yin was puzzled. Zhou Xian nodded. The old man slowly nodded as well. Little brother, you look very similar to our young master. The tribe only has a portrait of our young master when he was young, so you should be able to fool them with your appearance. Actually, you've already fooled them. The White Dragon tribe's elder took a look at you and your appearance passed. All that's left is for you to enjoy your life. Little brother, that's the White Dragon tribe we're talking about. Now that you've become a member of the White Dragon tribe, you're no longer an independent cultivator. You're a member of the White Dragon tribe, one of the 4 scales of the top realm, Zhou Xian excitedly said, his tone full of envy. Lu Yin sneered. You guys are really naive. Do you think it's possible for an outsider like me to pass the inspection and become a member of the White Dragon tribe? Just based on appearance? Zhou Xian confidently said, Of course not. We've already injected the blood of that young master into your body. The blood of the White Dragon tribe, even if it's just a branch, is far from what your own blood can compare to. You already have the blood of the White Dragon tribe in your body, and your own blood has already been assimilated. Little brother, don't you want to join the White Dragon tribe? Lu Yin's eyes flashed with mockery. Did they think he was an idiot? If it was that easy to fool the White Dragon tribe, it would be too much of a joke. Who knew what these two were planning? Zhou Xian's lips curled up. Little brother, it seems like you're not very willing. Unfortunately, there's no other way. The White Dragon tribe's elder has already confirmed your identity. If you're unwilling, you should have heard of the White Dragon tribe's methods. Lu Yin's expression turned ugly as he stared at Zhou Xian. Aren't you afraid that I'll be exposed and die with you? The old man was even more terrified. Zhou Xian's gaze was sinister and he no longer bothered with his pretense. I failed to protect the young master of the White Dragon tribe. This crime is enough for me to die 100 times over. Since I'm going to die anyway, little brother, do you think I'll take the risk? Lu Yin fell silent. If it were him, he would definitely take the risk as well. Based on Zhou Xian's tone, the White Dragon tribe was probably comparable to the Sirius sect in this dimension. Lu Yin didn't even have the desire to escape, or rather he didn't have the time to do so. He didn't have the time. If Lu Yin could temporarily pass the inspection, it would be the same as buying time for Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian would then be able to easily escape, and Lu Yin's life or death would have nothing to do with him. After understanding Zhou Xian's intentions, Lu Yin decided to take the risk and leave immediately. Facing an envoy-level monster was better than facing the so-called White Dragon tribe. That White Dragon tribe elder was much stronger than this one. Monsters were much harder to deal with, and Lu Yin had the Tianhuang array source box and the walnut power vessel. It was enough to deal with one monster. As for Zhou Xian, he couldn't stop Lu Yin at all. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold and he was just about to act when the ship swayed. Zhou Xian stood up. We're here. Lu Yin's heart sank, but it was too late. Envoy-level monsters were too fast, and they had arrived at their destination in the blink of an eye. That White Dragon Tribe elder and the other powerhouses of the White Dragon Tribe were definitely there, so there was no way to escape. Young master, please. Zhou Xian bowed respectfully to Lu Yin and gestured for him to leave. The elder stood up shakily. Young master, please. Lu Yin was helpless, as it was impossible to escape under these circumstances. As for explaining the situation to the White Dragon Tribe, they would have to believe him. He would not place his hopes on the White Dragon Tribe's kindness. He would just have to take it one step at a time. If he really couldn't do it, he could only go all out. It wasn't that he didn't have the ability to resist, but it depended on whether it was worth it. Lu Yin walked off the ship and stepped onto the giant monster's back. He was a bit nervous, as this was an envoy-level monster. There was a loud roar that was accompanied by the shaking of the earth, and Lu Yin almost put on his universal armor. Zhou Xian and the others beside him were also scared out of their wits. This was a mountain that stretched far into the distance. Lu Yin could not see clearly, but it covered a large area. In the distance there were floating peaks with white waterfalls hanging down from them. Strange beasts and fish flew through the sky from time to time. When Lu Yin and the others appeared, terrifying auras swept past them. Lu Yin roughly estimated that there were at least 10 enlighters here, and with the envoy-level monster and the White Dragon Tribe elder, the powerhouses here were definitely not weaker than those on Night King planet. Lu Yin was a bit shocked. Where had he come to? There were actually so many powerhouses here. Was this really Jupiter? Were these people all from the primeval surname Alliance? They were also on a floating mountain peak. From a distance, it looked like a mountain peak, but its size was comparable to Earth's. It was clearly a mountain peak, but it looked like floating stars. The mountain range beneath their feet reminded Lu Yin of the Glory Realm. Only the Glory Realm's continents could contain planets. Another roar came from behind them, and Zhou Xian and the others turned pale. They looked back from time to time, afraid that the monster would swallow them whole. In the distance, a group of cultivators dressed in white were lined up neatly. It was obvious that they were an army, and every one of them had the strength of an explorer. They held spears in their hands and looked straight ahead. Even further away there were buildings with mountains and rivers that were as beautiful as a painting. Lu Yin and the others were led by a pretty girl, and they saw an incomparably large building that resembled a white python. Its mouth was wide open and it looked like it could swallow the sky. The closer they got to the building, the heavier Lu Yin's heart became. He did not know why, but when he arrived here he suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. At the same time there was also an indescribable pressure. Although it was very weak, he could feel that this pressure far surpassed that of the envoy-level monster. After entering through the python's mouth, they arrived at a place that resembled an ancestral hall. It was solemn, and white was the main color of the hall. The walls were carved with lifelike patterns that resembled both dragon and python scales. The powerhouses that Lu Yin had sensed were all gathered here, and this place could be considered the belly of the python. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Thank you. Chapter 1351. The elder from the Lianshan branch was excited as he stared at the ancestral hall. This is the main ancestral hall. I never thought that I would be able to come here one day. I can die without regrets. Zhou Xian looked around with a burning gaze. This was the White Dragon Tribe's ancestral hall, and every powerhouse from the White Dragon Tribe would walk through it. It didn't look too grand, but enlighters, envoys, half-ancestors, and even legendary progenitors had all left their marks here. This place had recorded time and the passage of time. Lu Yin had never thought that he would one day be able to see this legendary place up close. Zhou Xian and the rest didn't even dare to breathe loudly. How many people in the entire astral tree domain could reach this place? All around them, the gazes of the powerhouses were enough to make them tremble in fear, even if Lu Yin had a power level of over 400,000. This was because there was more than one envoys here. Lu Yin looked around and saw that everyone was staring at him, but he didn't care. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. At this moment, his gaze was drawn to a woman who was standing in front of him. She was just as beautiful as Wendy Yushan and the others. Her appearance was refined and her long blue hair fell to her waist. She had a light aura, and her eyes were like limpid autumn waters with amber pupils. She was so beautiful that she could see the reflections of all things. Her gaze was gentle, but there was also a trace of sharpness to it. When she looked at Lu Yin, it felt like she was scrutinizing him, but for some reason, Lu Yin couldn't find it repulsive. This woman's attire was also different from the people around her. Zhou Xian, the White Dragon elders, and even the people around them were dressed in an ancient style. Only this woman was dressed casually, which made her stand out from the crowd. Coupled with her long blue hair, if not for her strength, he would have thought that she was a student from some university. She wore long boots that were custom-made, and every stripe was the same as the engravings in the ancestral hall. When Lu Yin met her eyes, it was as if a gust of wind had blown past him, bringing with it a delicate fragrance that was intoxicating. Lu Yin was observing her and she was doing the same to him. Lu Yin's appearance could not be considered outstanding, and he could only be considered ordinary. This was something that the woman had long since known. As for his power level, she was rather surprised as he was actually a hunter. Ignoring his true power level, his current realm was already pretty good. Even though he could not compare to the best of their group, he could still be considered a respectable figure. She did not expect the branch to produce such a talent, but it made sense. After all, they were from the White Dragon clan. Even if it was a branch, it was normal for a talented elite to occasionally appear. Is he from the Lianshan branch of the White Dragon clan? A discordant voice sounded. Everyone looked in the same direction, where an old man in green robes was staring at Lu Yin. His gaze was unfriendly, and it could even be said to be filled with murderous intent. Lu Yin frowned, but he didn't say anything. Zhou Xian said, "That's right, he." But before he could finish speaking, the green-robed old man's eyes widened. "Do you have the right to interrupt when I'm speaking?" As his voice fell, a finger pressed down from the void and pointed at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian had not expected the old man to attack without any warning. He had no ability to resist at all, and his heart sank into despair. When he saw the finger descend, Lu Yin's pupils shrank and his mind buzzed. This was the dream finger. There was no mistaking it, it was the dream finger. Although there were some differences, the feeling that it gave him was definitely correct. The White Dragon elder looked up, but he did not seem to move and the finger's power dissipated. Elder Green Apricot, whether or not he is from the White Dragon clan will be determined by the White Dragon clan. It has nothing to do with your frigid immortal sect. Elder Green Apricot snorted. He's just an ant. So what if he dies? Since when has Brother Long Kuei been so kind? The elder spoke up. After all, he has performed meritorious service by escorting a member of the White Dragon clan. Humph. From Elder Green Apricot's attack to the White Dragon clan's elder's intervention, the woman's expression did not change at all. She merely stared at Lu Yin. When she saw that Lu Yin had remained motionless in the face of that finger, her pupils shrank and her brows furrowed. He was too cowardly. He was clearly a hunter, but he did not even dare to move. That attack had not been aimed at him, and he did not have the willpower of a cultivator. His future achievements would probably be limited. She was somewhat sorrowful, as she had never thought that the princess of the White Dragon clan would have to give herself to such a person. The elder glanced at Lu Yin, clearly dissatisfied. This kid was too cowardly. Lu Yin did not have the time to care about what they thought. He looked at Elder Green Apricot and thought about that finger. He thought about those 3 words. Frigid Immortal Sect. This elder was from the Frigid Immortal Sect. Did the dream finger originate from that sect? Frigid Immortal Sect. Frigid Immortal Sect. Lu Yin had heard of it before. The first time he had gone to the day-night flow zone to rescue a mother and daughter, he had heard them mention the Frigid Immortal Sect. The day-night flow zone had also been called the Frigid Immortal Flow Zone in ancient times. Was that the Frigid Immortal Sect? It should be, or else it would not be so coincidental. The words frigid immortal were not commonly used. If that was the case, then this place was not the 5th mainland, as the frigid immortal sect had long since disappeared. So where was this place? What did it have to do with his background? What did the frigid immortal sect have to do with him? Lu Yin did not want to leave. He wanted to investigate everything, and there was nothing more convenient than starting with the White Dragon tribe. The frigid immortal sect also had to take care of the White Dragon tribe. Lu Yin's starting point was very high. Now he just had to find a way to hide it from the White Dragon tribe and replace Long 7 from the Lianshan branch. He was even more eager to join the White Dragon tribe than Zhou Xian and the others. Elder Long Kuei, is he Long 7? The woman asked. Her voice was pleasant and soothing like a clear stream flowing past. Elder Long Kue respectfully replied, "Yes, he is Long 7. He has the bloodline of the White Dragon tribe. No matter what, we still need to verify it." Long Kue replied, "All right, I'll verify it." She shook her head. "In the future he will be my husband, so I'll verify it myself." Lu Yin was still thinking about the dream finger when he suddenly heard some shocking news. Who husband? What the hell? He subconsciously looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's eyelids twitched, but he pretended to be calm. He had not told Lu Yin that he was going to marry into the White Dragon tribe, as no one could resist the temptation of becoming the son-in-law of the main bloodline of the White Dragon tribe. He thought that he had done it flawlessly, and while Lu Yin had been unconscious, he had worked with the elder to inject Long 7's blood into Lu Yin's body. The White Dragon tribe's bloodline was enough to suppress a normal person's blood, and even though it was only effective for a short period of time, it was enough to deal with this verification. As for whether or not he would be exposed later on, it would have nothing to do with him. The elder trembled and his fear grew. At this point he could only pray that he would pass the verification. The frigid immortal sect's elder Blue Apricot did not stop him, as there was no need for him to do so. Even though the frigid immortal sect could suppress the White Dragon tribe, they could not be too ruthless. They had already wiped out many of the young masters from the White Dragon tribe's branches, and the White Dragon tribe had been lucky enough to send one over. Everything had been decided the moment they had stepped into White Mountain. To him, the verification seemed like the White Dragon tribe was mocking the frigid immortal sect. Elder Blue Apricot did not care anymore, as he was thinking about how to explain things when he returned. They had paid such a high price and risked defending the White Dragon tribe to kill all the young masters from the various branches, but they had still failed. No one had thought that Lu Yin was a fake, as no one had expected Zhou Xian to be so daring as to ask someone to impersonate him. They had also not expected that someone who looked like Long 7 would actually appear. Disguises could not fool these experts, and Lu Yin really did look like Long 7. It could only be said that this was the will of heaven. The woman walked in front of Lu Yin and a delicate fragrance wafted over. Lu Yin subconsciously took a deep breath. It smelled good. Lu Yin's actions caused the woman to frown, and she glared at him sharply. He smiled apologetically. The woman looked at Lu Yin for a while, and her heart grew more and more sorrowful. Since ancient times, the women of the White Dragon tribe had never married outside of the tribe. They had always married the elites of the tribe, and she was naturally the same. However, there were very few men in this generation of the White Dragon tribe. They were either married too young, or forced by the frigid immortal sect to not marry her. The frigid immortal sect wanted to marry her not because of love, but because they coveted the White Dragon tribe's future. Everyone knew this, and she could not let the frigid immortal sect succeed. The White Dragon tribe did not want to fall out with the frigid immortal sect, so she could only choose one of the branch members to marry. These people did not dare to disobey the orders of the main family, and the frigid immortal sect's threats were ineffective. There were many branches in the White Dragon tribe, and she could have chosen one. Who would have thought that the frigid immortal sect would be so ruthless as to directly send people to kill one of the branches? They no longer cared about the White Dragon tribes falling out with them. This made the White Dragon tribe even more fearful. Ever since that woman had taken over, the frigid immortal sect had gradually risen above the upper realm and could not be stopped. Even the White Dragon tribe, which was also one of the 4 cardinal scales, did not want to start a war with the frigid immortal sect. Even if one of the branches was killed, they could only feign ignorance. Fortunately, one of the branch's young masters had survived and had been sent to her. If she did not want to marry someone from the frigid immortal sect, she could only marry this person. She had no other choice. Everyone waited for the woman to verify Lu Yin's identity. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed, and he was prepared to put on his universal armor and escape at any moment. "Drip your blood." The woman took out something that looked like an inkstone and had Lu Yin drip his blood onto it. Lu Yin casually cut his finger and dripped a drop of blood onto the inkstone, but there was no reaction. The woman's expression changed. Behind them, Elder Green Apricot was still thinking about how to explain things to the frigid immortal sect, so she did not pay too much attention to Lu Yin. The woman's eyes flickered and she stared at Lu Yin with murderous intent. Lu Yin's heart sank. Not good, he had failed. He clenched his fists and prepared to put on his universal armor at any moment. At that moment, the woman made an imperceptible cut on her finger and dripped a drop of blood onto the ink stone. The ink stone glowed, and then a white light shot into the sky and transformed into a python that roamed the void before finally dissipating. Elder Green Apricot saw this and was not surprised, but her gaze grew even colder. The woman coldly said, "There's no problem with your identity." She then glanced at Lu Yin with an intense warning in her eyes. Lu Yin fell silent and did not say anything. His identity was fake, but the woman had verified it and helped him hide it. Clearly, this was to deal with that elder from the frigid Immortal sect. It seemed that his identity was very useful to the White Dragon tribe, to the point that even if they found out that he was fake, they would still have to admit that he was real. This was interesting. Chapter 1352. From start to finish, only the woman and Lu Yin knew about this. Everyone else had not seen it as the woman had blocked their view. Zhou Xian heaved a sigh of relief as he had managed to get away with it. Now all he had to do was wait for the reward. No one noticed that the woman's White Dragon clan blood had fused with Lu Yin's within the ink stone. Afterward, the White Dragon clan blood was broken down and devoured, as if it had never existed. This was a very domineering scene as it was a bloodline suppression. The White Dragon clan was one of the 4 scales in the top realm, and they could be considered one of the rulers of this region. No one could have imagined that their bloodline would be forcefully devoured. This was also why the test had failed. Zhou Xian had thought that the White Dragon clan's blood would be able to suppress Lu Yin's, and that the blood would definitely be effective during the test. However, he did not know that Long Qi's blood was immediately broken down and devoured after entering Lu Yin's body. Elder Green Apricot, Long Qi and I will be getting married tonight, and we will soon pay our respects to the ancestral Mang. Would you like to stay for the wedding? The woman smiled at the elder from the frigid Immortal sect. Elder Green Apricot's expression turned ugly as he looked at the woman. Princess Long Qi, you'd best think this through. The White Dragon clan might be doomed because of your decision. Green Apricot, you're too presumptuous. The White Dragon clan is one of the 4 scales, and it's not up to you to tell them what to do. Even Bai Xiaohong is just a junior, and he has no right to decide the future of the White Dragon clan. Long Kuei shouted, glaring at Elder Green Apricot. Elder Qing Xing waved his hand and left. Just you wait. This won't end here. You won't be able to bear the wrath of the White Ancestor. He paused for a moment, then turned around and looked at Long Kuei and the others. He pointed upwards. You won't be able to bear the wrath of that person either. Even the White Dragon clan won't be able to bear it. Long Qi's expression changed. Elder Green Apricot's words, especially his gesture, caused a figure to appear in her mind. It was a figure that stood above all living beings and was worshipped by all races. That dreamy face was clearly a woman, but it was peerless and unparalleled. It was as if she could cover the sky with one hand. Long Kuei's face turned pale. Apparently, he had also thought of something and his eyes were filled with fear. Xiao Qian, bring Long Qi to rest, ordered Long Qi. The girl who had led them here was Xiao Qian, and she gestured for Lu Yin to enter. Lu Yin glanced at Zhou Xian. He wanted to remind him that his plan had failed, but there were too many people here and he couldn't do so. Lu Yin found it funny when he saw Zhou Xian's expression of relief. Zhou Xian probably wouldn't even know how he had died. Forget it, it had nothing to do with him. It didn't take long for Xiao Qian to bring him to an antique bamboo house that had been built on top of a pond. Beneath their feet, they could see fish swimming through the gaps between the bamboo leaves. The house was surrounded by mountain walls and there was even a waterfall in the distance. Young master, please rest for a moment, Xiao Qian said coldly. She didn't even look at him as she turned around and walked out of the bamboo house, where she stood there quietly. He sat down and stroked his cosmic ring as he thought about his next steps. Obviously, the finger in his dream came from the cold Immortal sect. Did the woman he saw in his dreams come from there as well? If that was the case, Lu Yin thought back to the war between the Outerverse and the Sixth Mainland. That finger had traversed a vast distance and tried to crush him. If not for Mr. Mu's jade, he would have been finished. Since that woman had been able to travel through space and descend into the Outerverse, then this region of space was definitely connected to the Fifth Mainland. He was already certain that this was not the interior of Jupiter, as he could tell just from the distance. The size of Jupiter was just a floating mountain. Lu Yin would have believed it if this was the glory realm. This was not Jupiter, but he had been sucked in by Jupiter. Did that mean that this was a passage? Then Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui were also in this region of space. The primeval surname alliance was also here. He would definitely be able to find clues about his origins in this region of space. If he joined the White Dragon clan, it would be easier for him to find out about his origins, and it would also be easier for him to come into contact with the Cold Immortal sect. But now the problem was that he did not want to get married. White side. Zhou Xian was excited after being rewarded. The White Dragon clan was indeed generous, and they had casually rewarded him with something that was equivalent to what he had accumulated in the first half of his life. What he needed to do now was leave as quickly as possible. That brat's draconic 7 blood would not last for more than a few days, and they would definitely find out that he was not a member of the White Dragon clan. He had to hide first. Behind him, the elder from the Lianshan branch was deathly pale, and he followed Lu Yin as if he was sleepwalking. Zhou Xian glanced at the elder. "What's wrong with you? Don't let yourself be exposed. Hurry up and leave." The elder smiled sadly and looked at Zhou Xian in despair. "Do you think you've fooled them?" Zhou Xian was stunned. "What do you mean?" The elder closed his eyes. "If I can fool them, I won't be expelled. After all, I've served the Lianshan branch for many years, and the White Dragon clan won't be so heartless. Do you understand?" Zhou Xian's expression changed, and at that moment the envoy-level monster stood up and seemed to be stretching. Zhou Xian did not even dare to breathe loudly. The monster then raised its claw and a huge shadow loomed over him. "No!" Zhou Xian roared. The monster's claw descended, and Zhou Xian, the elder, and the rest of the people were all crushed into a pool of blood. This scene played out before Long Shi's eyes. This group of people had given her hope that she would not have to marry Bai Xiaohong from the frigid Immortal sect, but they had dared to deceive her and the White Dragon clan. This was a crime punishable by death. Within the bamboo house, Lu Yin was bored out of his mind. The fish beneath his feet jumped up and down, splashing water onto the backs of his feet. "Your Highness," Xiaoqian bowed respectfully. Long Shi walked over and looked at Lu Yin coldly. "Xiaoqian, you can leave now." "Yes, Your Highness." Lu Yin and Long Shi looked at each other calmly. Long Shi's tone was stiff, but her voice was pleasant. "You've got guts. How dare you deceive the White Dragon clan?" Lu Yin was helpless. "Your Highness, this has nothing to do with me. I was injured and floating on the Midland Sea. Zhou Xian and the rest saved me and then forced me to replace Long 7. I actually refused, but you know that I couldn't resist." Long Shi naturally knew that with the White Dragon clan's abilities, it would be easy for them to investigate everything. "But you impersonated a member of the White Dragon clan. This is a crime punishable by death." Lu Yin blinked. "All right then, Your Highness, please grant me death." Long Shi stared at Lu Yin, feeling strange. This guy had been so afraid of death when he had faced Elder Green Apricot's attack that he hadn't even been able to react in time. Why was he so stubborn now? "It seems like you're certain that I won't kill you. You're quite clever." "You flatter me," Lu Yin replied. Long Shi's long blue hair fluttered in the breeze, brushing past the back of Lu Yin's hand. It was a little itchy, but it was very comfortable. The fragrance from her body also cleared his mind. Long Shi stared at Lu Yin coldly. "I can't kill you, but that doesn't mean that I can't punish you. You can be burned by fire or cut by 1,000 blades. Which one do you want to endure?" Lu Yin raised his brows and looked at the fish swimming beneath his feet. "Princess, I'm just like these fish and I can't escape. You can do whatever you want and I'll listen to you. Just don't hit me. I'm afraid of pain and I'm even more afraid of death." Long Shi's eyes flashed as she looked at Lu Yin's calm face. She didn't know why, but she felt a little annoyed. She didn't care about ordinary people like him, and even if they had some innate gifts and cultivated to the hunter realm, she still wouldn't care about them. There were many rare treasures in this region of space, and there were many people who had cultivated to the hunter realm at a young age. There was more than one hunter among the younger generation of the White Dragon clan, and there were even a few who had cultivated to the enlightened realm. She shouldn't have any emotional fluctuations when speaking to such an ordinary person, as she only needed to follow orders. However, the calmer Lu Yin was, the more annoyed she felt. It was as if he didn't care about her at all. His temperament and tone made it seem like he was high and mighty. "Are you very pleased?" Lu Yin was stunned and confused. "Pleased about what?" Long Shi's tone was icy. "You know that I'm using you to get through this crisis and that I won't marry anyone else for the rest of my life. So you think that you're my husband and won't be in danger. That's why you speak to me without respect for seniority. Lu Yin was at a loss. Should there be respect for seniority? He didn't understand. Was there something wrong with his attitude? A petty person intoxicated by success, she said as she stared at Lu Yin. She suddenly raised her hand and 5 strange metal tokens revolved around Lu Yin's body. Lu Yin's expression changed and he lightly tapped his feet in an attempt to avoid them. However, he discovered that he couldn't pass through them, as the space around him had been separated. He struck out with his palm, but it only contained 150 stacks. This sort of overlaying stacks was considered outstanding among hunters, but it wasn't too eye-catching. Lu Yin's palm struck a metal block, but it didn't budge at all. This feeling was very similar to the source box array that Huizu had used to trap him. However, one was a source box array while the other was a battle technique. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're a little smart. This is the White Dragon clan, and even if I don't kill you, I have countless ways to make you beg for death. She said coldly before turning to leave. You're getting married tonight. Before that, reflect on your actions and recognize your attitude. Lu Yin hurriedly replied, getting married? I'm not ready yet. She ignored him. The White Dragon clan was high and mighty, and they didn't need to pay attention to a normal person. After she left, Xianxia returned and gave Lu Yin a cold look. She then stood guard outside the bamboo house without saying a word. Sister, can you help me undo this seal? Lu Yin called out. Xianxia ignored him and calmly looked at the waterfall in the distance. Lu Yin called out a few more times before sighing helplessly. What had he done wrong? Was his attitude wrong? It seemed that this region cared a lot about one's attitude. The White Dragon clan was high and mighty, so he had to act humble? Lu Yin felt helpless as he didn't know what to do. The 5 pieces of metal around him were still spinning. Lu Yin glanced at Xianxia and then raised a hand to press down on one of the pieces of metal. He suddenly exerted 200 stacks on the metal block, but it still didn't budge in the slightest. He didn't believe that 220 stacks, 230 stacks, and all the way to 250 stacks wouldn't budge the metal block. Lu Yin sighed in amazement as even the power of this technique was comparable to Huizu's. That woman was probably an enlighter and she would be considered one of the top powerhouses in the sovereign tournament. This region's cultivation system seemed to surpass the 5th and 6th mainlands, and he could casually encounter such an expert. There were even a few envoy-level powerhouses. Chapter 1353. It would not be easy to break through these pieces of metal, so Lu Yin did not use his emptiness palm to test it out. No matter how powerful the woman was, this seal would definitely be weaker than Huizu's seemingly sealed seal. His emptiness palm might be able to shake it or even break it, but once it was broken it would be a huge problem. He did not want to attract too much attention. It was better for him to just be a normal hunter. At least for now he would not be in any danger. It was a pity that he could not see rune lines in this space. Otherwise he would be able to more accurately judge the woman's strength and the strength of the White Mountains. The sky quickly darkened as red clouds covered the White Mountains. Above them was a boundless starry sky filled with countless twinkling stars. At the very top was the top realm that Zhou Xian and the others had mentioned. A continent was pressing down on another continent, and there was actually a starry sky in the middle. It was a wonderful world. After a few hours, when the sky was completely dark, She arrived at the bamboo house. The moment he saw her, Lu Yin squeezed out a smile and tried his best to appear humble. Ahem, princess. My attitude was bad before, but I won't do it again. She frowned. She did not know why, but she felt that there was still something wrong with this guy's attitude. She could not feel the sincere respect he had for the White Dragon clan, especially for her, the princess. However, the time had come and she did not want to delay any further. Correct your attitude and don't say anything. Just follow me. Yes, princess, Lu Yin answered softly. Xi's expression improved slightly. Although she still did not like Lu Yin, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future to slowly teach him. Lu Yin did not want to get married, but he could not risk fighting the White Dragon clan for this. One of the 4 Libras was not simple, and there were definitely powerhouses with power levels over 1,000,000. He did not want to die and he still wanted to find out about his origins. He had thought that the marriage of the princess of the White Dragon clan would be sensational and lively, but he had not expected that it would just be to pay respects to the ancestors in the ancestral hall. She had not even changed her clothes. This was too sloppy. There was only one elder around, Elder Long Kue. Of course he did not know if anyone else had seen him. Lu Yin wanted to ask as this was the first wedding of his life. However, when he saw Long Shi's cold expression, he rationally chose not to ask. He was now thinking about the most important thing, the wedding night. In this starry sky civilization it was called the wedding night. Thinking about it he was quite nervous. He had not even reached this step with Ming Yan. When he thought of Ming Yan he felt guilty. He didn't know how she was doing where she was, or how she had managed to obtain information on Alu. Right now it's just a ceremony. My White Dragon clan has 3 steps to a marriage. The first step is to pay respects to our ancestors, the second step is to pay respects to the ancestral Mang, and the third step is to register our names in the clan records. Only then will we truly get married. At that time we will invite guests from all over. As the princess of the White Dragon clan, I will naturally get married in the top realm, Long Shi explained. Lu Yin understood that this was not a real marriage. It was just a ceremony to make the frigid immortal sect give up. Even if I didn't complete the third step, I'm already your wife. Long Shi looked at Lu Yin seriously. Lu Yin could see his own reflection in her amber eyes. From now on, even though we won't be husband and wife, we will still be husband and wife in name. I'll use you to get through this crisis so I won't let you down. In this life I, Long Shi, will only be your wife, Long Shi said indifferently as if she was talking about something unrelated to her. Lu Yin felt a little depressed. He looked at Long Shi and saw that her eyes were filled with sorrow and even a bit of despair. What was going on? Did she have someone she liked? Do you know why I'm willing to marry you? Long Shi asked. To get through this crisis. Long Shi's eyes dimmed. Because you're 7 as well. She then extinguished the candle. Stay away from me. Lu Yin looked at Long Shi's back. She was so beautiful but also so bleak. She definitely had someone she liked. It was the wedding night, but he couldn't do anything in front of such a beauty. Lu Yin was speechless. Life was full of mysteries. The stars twinkled and the speckles made it look like a painting. Silver light shone into the room. Lu Yin was resting obediently when he suddenly smelled a familiar fragrance. He opened his eyes and saw Long Shi standing in front of the window with her back to him. Long Shi turned around and looked at Lu Yin, her eyes bright and beautiful under the night sky. She raised her hand and made a cut with her delicate fingertip, shooting a drop of essence blood towards him. Lu Yin didn't understand but Long Shi said, "This is my essence blood. If you absorb it, your true identity won't be discovered. It can also increase your strength." When he heard that it could increase his strength, he didn't reject it. Essence blood wasn't poison and he allowed it to fuse into his body. Long Shi looked at him deeply and then left the room. Even if she didn't like this person, he would be her husband in the future. She would do her best to help him. Even if she didn't reach great heights, she would at least be worthy of his efforts. To a woman, her husband was the most important person. No matter how she felt about Lu Yin, she had to slowly accept him in the depths of her heart. Lu Yin did not have the time to care about what Long Shi was thinking. Ever since the essence blood had fused with his body, his blood had been boiling. This was not the blood of an ordinary white dragon, but the purest essence blood of a white dragon princess. As the essence blood entered his body, an indescribable power descended. Behind Lu Yin, a giant python appeared out of nowhere. The python was like an illusion, but it was also like an imprint. It appeared behind Lu Yin and slowly expanded. Outside the room, Long Shi wasn't surprised. Her essence blood had triggered the power of the ancestral mandala, which was enough to increase a person's cultivation. As for how much it increased, it depended on how much that person could bear. The power of the ancestral mandala wasn't something that an ordinary body could bear. Elder Blue Apricot, who was outside White Mountain, saw everything that happened here. Elder Blue Apricot was furious. This phenomenon clearly meant that Long Shi had already given her essence blood to that brat. To the White Dragon clan, this was equivalent to their first night. In other words, the moment this phenomenon appeared, it officially meant that Long Shi was no longer a young girl but a married woman. The frigid immortal sex plan had failed, and Elder Green Apricot left with an ashen expression. The junior ancestor would not let this matter rest. Long Shi watched as the ancestral mandala grew larger and larger, and her gaze dimmed. She naturally knew what this meant. From today onwards, that figure would disappear forever. No, that wasn't right. He had already disappeared and he would never appear again. The colossal python phenomenon appeared quickly and disappeared just as quickly. In the distance, Long Kuei sighed. Beneath his feet, the envoy-level beast's entire head was buried in the ground as it trembled. The ancestral mandala's power terrified it, and it didn't even dare to look at it. Within the room, the ancestral mandala didn't disappear. Instead, it turned into a current that rushed into Lu Yin's body and replaced his star energy circulation. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yin reached his 14th cycle as a hunter, but he didn't stop there. As the ancestral mandala's power entered his body, Lu Yin's body began to bear a terrifying pressure. Even though his eyes were closed, he could still see an incomparably large python that stretched from the heavens to the earth. The higher he looked, the more he couldn't see the top and the greater the pressure on his body. After his 15th cycle as a hunter, Lu Yin's body tensed up and his veins popped out. Traces of blood seeped out of his body and dyed the ground red. In the blink of an eye, the 16th cycle ended and his body began to crack. He couldn't bear it any longer. Suddenly he heard an earth-shattering roar in his mind. It was the ancestral mandala's roar, and Lu Yin spat out a mouthful of blood. His right hand pressed against the ground as the ancestral mandala's power disappeared from his body. Lu Yin looked at the bloodstains on the ground in disbelief. He had worked so hard on his cultivation in the Fifth Mainland, thinking of all sorts of ways to increase his cultivation speed and enduring the pain of being tempered by flames. Here he had actually used a single drop of essence blood to increase his cultivation by 3 minor realms. This was too fast. The power that had helped him increase his cultivation level was the power of a progenitor. There was a progenitor in this space, and if Lu Yin's guess was correct, it should be the incomparably large python that he had seen earlier. A python had cultivated to the progenitor realm? In that case, could this so-called White Dragon clan borrow the ancestral mandala's power because it was a descendant of the ancestral mandala? The progenitor realm was beyond the Fifth Mainland's reach. The Sixth Mainland had 3 progenitors, but Lu Yin had never seen them before. He had only sensed their vast power. However, in comparison, he felt that the Sixth Mainland's martial progenitor might not be as powerful as this ancestral mandala, as the aura it gave off was completely different. The White Dragon clan had this ancestral mandala and could borrow its power. In that case, the frigid Immortal sect, which was suppressing the White Dragon clan, must also have a progenitor. This was terrifying as there were 4 scales in the top realm. Did this mean that there were at least 4 progenitors? Moreover, all of them were not inferior to that ancestral mandala? The more Lu Yin thought about it, the more terrifying it became. This region of space far surpassed the Fifth Mainland and even the Sixth Mainland. Where exactly was this place? Lu Yin suddenly recalled the incident that had caused the inner verse and outer verse to be separated. The Sea King had broken through the upper 3 gates, so could this be the place behind the upper 3 gates? There was the sound of footsteps as Long Shi walked in. She looked at Lu Yin with a curious gaze. Lu Yin stood up and coughed twice. "Thank you." Long Shi sized him up. "How is it?" Lu Yin replied, "I'm a 16-cycle hunter now." It was strange, as the realms here were exactly the same as those in the Fifth Mainland. Lu Yin increasingly felt that this place was related to the Fifth Mainland. Long Shi frowned. "Your body can't take it anymore?" Lu Yin nodded honestly. Long Shi was disappointed, as the White Dragon Princess essence blood was enough to raise a cultivator who had just become a hunter all the way to the peak of the hunter realm unless their physical body was too weak. After all, they had borrowed the power of the ancestral mandala, which was the power of a progenitor. However, this person's body had only improved by a small amount, and his physical body could not take it anymore. Some people could challenge those at a higher realm, while others could not even defeat a powerhouse at the same realm. From her point of view, Lu Yin was clearly the latter. Pay more attention to your physical body's cultivation in the future. It's not enough to just increase your realm, Long Shi said. She thought that Lu Yin had focused all of his previous cultivation on increasing his realm, but then she thought about the 150 stacks that Lu Yin had displayed during the day. The overlaying stacks path had very high physical requirements. When she thought about this, she looked at Lu Yin strangely. If this person's physical strength was not too weak, then why had he only improved by a small amount? Chapter 1354. Lu Yin was already very satisfied as he needed to absorb a huge amount of star energy for each cycle, far surpassing that of others. Being able to reach 16 cycles in one go was quite impressive. He didn't explain much to Longxi. From that night onwards, their relationship would change from that of strangers to that of husband and wife. A few days passed peacefully. Ever since he had become a hunter with 16 cycles, Lu Yin had been constantly replenishing the star energy in his body. He had borrowed the power of the ancestral python to advance, so he needed to replenish the empty star energy. Longxi was very generous and gave him 200,000 star essence. It wasn't much, at least not in the eyes of a princess of the White Dragon clan. She had only given him so little because, in her words, it was enough for Lu Yin. A normal person would need at most 30,000 star essence for their 16th cycle, and she had given him 200,000, which would be enough for him to cultivate until he became an enlighter. From now on, I'll give you some resources every month. As the son-in-law of the White Dragon clan's main bloodline, you can't be too poor. Longxi's words echoed in Lu Yin's ears as he looked at a brand new cosmic ring. This one had also been given to him by Longxi. She had used a dismissive tone to ask Lu Yin to change to this one that she thought was bigger. She didn't even care about Lu Yin's previous one. He didn't know where this brat had gotten her confidence from, but this one didn't even have a tenth of the space in Lu Yin's current one. As for star essence, how much would he have left? 200,000 star essence wasn't even enough for him to complete a cycle as a cruiser. Now that he had reached his 16th cycle as a hunter, he needed 3 million star essence. If word got out, that brat would be scared silly. Even the so-called elite White Dragon clan couldn't possibly need that much for their 16th cycle. Lu Yin looked up at the sky and saw mountains the size of planets. Waterfalls cascaded down like the Milky Way, and giant creatures wandered about from time to time. However, once they got close, they would be scared away by the envoys. Every mountain here was inhabited by at least a few billion people. Some of the mountains had even developed their own unique civilizations, and these people wanted to leave their world and head to a higher world. They had no idea that the moment they left their mountain peaks, they would be enslaved by the White Dragon clan. The saddest thing in a person's life was to work hard to the end, only to realize that it was still the beginning. Lu Yin didn't see many people over the past few days, and the only person he could talk to was Zhou Xian. Unfortunately, she didn't pay much attention to him. "Someone's coming. Son-in-law, let's go back," said Zhou Xian. A group of people passed by in the distance. Lu Yin rolled his eyes. "Why? Can't I meet people? Can't take it out?" Zhou Qian pursed her lips. She really wanted to say yes, but he was still her son-in-law. Even if he was a useless son-in-law, he was still her son-in-law. She couldn't be so impudent. The princess has ordered that the son-in-law is not allowed to see outsiders. Lu Yin sighed. Forget it, there was no need for him to force himself before he could familiarize himself with this region of space. He then decided to leave with Zhou Qian. The group of people in the distance noticed him and immediately chased after him. Lu Yin turned around and saw a young man leading the group, who was staring at him with mockery and killing intent. Zhou Qian's expression changed. "Young master, let's leave quickly." Unfortunately, it was too late. The young man in the lead was extremely fast, and his footsteps were light as he used a strange footwork technique to circle around the two of them and block their path. "Look at who this is. Isn't this the husband of our White Dragon clan's Princess Longxi?" Zhou Qian's expression turned ugly. "Young Master Zhang, the son-in-law wants to go back. Please move aside." The young man glared at her. "Is there a place for a lowly servant like you to interrupt when I'm speaking?" Zhou Qian frowned. "I wouldn't dare. It's just that the princess has ordered for the son-in-law to go back." The young man sneered and looked at Lu Yin mockingly. "You want to go back?" At that moment, a group of people caught up and surrounded Lu Yin and Zhou Qian. Lu Yin calmly replied, "Yes." The young man laughed and the group beside him laughed as well. Lu Yin frowned. Where had this group of lunatics come from? "Did you hear that? Our precious son-in-law wants to go home." The young man laughed. The group beside him laughed heartily. Zhou Qian's face paled. "Young Master Zhang, please move aside." Lu Yin did not speak as this group did not pose any threat to him. Even if this young Master Zhang was a peak hunter, Lu Yin still did not place him in his eyes. Listening to their conversation was a good way to understand their current situation. Young Master Zhang ignored Zhou Qian and instead looked at Lu Yin. "You're from the Lianshan branch, right? You must have burned some incense to enter the main branch." But remember, you're just an adopted son-in-law and a useless one at that. In the future when you see me you have to bow before you scram. Do you hear me? Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This brat was asking for a beating. At that moment a voice came from afar. Longzhang, who are you asking to bow? Do you want this princess to bow as well? The speaker was Long Shi and she had come from afar. Long Zhang and the rest heard the voice and their expressions changed as they looked behind them. Long Shi leisurely walked over and her absolute beauty stunned the group. Even Long Zhang was a little infatuated, and the more infatuated he was, the more jealous he felt towards Lu Yin. What right did a piece of trash have to obtain Princess Long Shi? She was a treasure of the topmost realm, and her essence blood alone was enough to drive anyone crazy. Even the frigid immortal sex by Xiaozhu coveted her, but a piece of trash had obtained her. Princess, Zhou Xian bowed. Long Shi arrived and looked at Lu Yin calmly. She then looked at Long Zhang. You're getting more and more impudent. Long Zhang smiled. Princess, our brothers couldn't stand it. A piece of trash from a branch like this is an insult to you. Is that so? I gave you a chance back then, Long Shi said indifferently. Long Zhang's expression changed, and his heart was filled with regret and jealousy. He dreamed of obtaining Long Shi, but the people behind him wanted her as well, so he didn't dare to speak up. What are you doing here? Long Shi asked. Long Zhang replied, Congratulations on your marriage, princess. I also wanted to learn from the new son-in-law. Long Shi's tone turned cold. There's no need for that. Go back. Princess, Long Zhang refused to give up. Long Shi's gaze turned cold and she suddenly attacked. 5 pieces of metal surrounded Long Zhang, shocking him. White Dragon Divine Mirror? Long Shi's hand pierced through the metal and landed on Long Zhang's chest. Long Zhang spat out a mouthful of blood and fell off the mountain peak. The people around him rushed over to save him. Long Shi looked down from above. This is just a lesson. If you dare to provoke the son-in-law again, I'll make you beg for death. She then stared at Lu Yin. Go back. Lu Yin trembled. What a fierce woman. Zhou Xian smiled and gestured for Lu Yin to leave. This way, young master. Lu Yin pursed his lips and followed Long Shi out of the mountain peak. At the bottom of the mountain the metal around Long Zhang disappeared and he slammed the ground angrily. His eyes were filled with murderous intent, but he didn't dare say anything. Long Shi's status was higher than his, and even if she killed him she would at most be punished. He knew her well and she was someone who would do what she said. Let's go, young master. Let's see how long he can live, Long Zhang muttered. He looked into the distance once more before leading the group away. Elsewhere, Lu Yin returned to the bamboo house. He liked the environment here. No one would disturb him and it was very remote. Long Shi sized him up. This will happen more often in the future. If you don't want to be bullied, work harder. Lu Yin nodded and looked at Long Shi curiously. What was that battle technique of yours? Long Shi replied, White Dragon Mirror. Can even trap opponents who are much stronger than me and render them powerless. It's an inherited battle technique of the White Dragon clan. Does Long Zhang know it? Lu Yin asked. Long Shi shook her head. Not everyone can learn it and not everyone is qualified to learn it. He doesn't have a main bloodline so he can only learn the White Dragon roaming steps. Lu Yin was interested. White Dragon roaming steps. Is it powerful? Can I learn it? And the White Dragon mirror? Long Shi looked into the distance. You can learn it but it'll be difficult for you. Even Long Zhang took more than 10 years to learn it. It'll take you at least 10 years to learn it. I can learn it even without the White Dragon bloodline. Lu Yin was happy. Long Shi frowned and glared at Lu Yin. Remember, don't ever say that. The essence blood I gave you is enough to keep you hidden for a while. Lu Yin quickly agreed. This woman's temper was too bad. Long Shi was irritated. She had already arrived when Long Zhang had provoked her, but for some reason she had not shown herself. In the end she had seen Lu Yin being submissive and not daring to retort. Perhaps she had hoped that Lu Yin would resist bravely and not just be stubborn in front of her. This was a man's responsibility. After all, this man was going to be with her for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, she was disappointed. This man was afraid of others and only dared to retort in front of her. A man like this would never be useful. More people will visit in the near future. Don't go out, Long Shi said. Lu Yin did not refute. It's too boring to be alone. Find me some books to read. Longxi was annoyed. You don't know how to cultivate? What could Luyin say? Cultivate? He had never relaxed, but how could he dare to cultivate in a place like this? He could only recite the Stonewall scriptures. He did not dare to release his domain or spiritual force at all. Otherwise he would be strictly investigated. Let Xiaoqian take you to the library. Don't go out until I call for you. The more Longxi looked at Luyin, the more annoyed she became. She simply stopped looking at him and left without looking back. Even though he was just a substitute to deal with the frigid Immortal sect, she still hoped that he would be able to live up to her expectations. Unfortunately, he was disappointing her more and more. With Longxi's orders, Xiaoqian brought Luyin to the White Mountain Library. Human civilization could never be separated from inheritances. If there were inheritances, there would definitely be a library. Regardless of whether it was an ordinary person or a power like the White Dragon clan, the more books there were, the better. The White Mountain Library was huge. There are at least 100 million books there. It's enough for you to read, Xiaoqian said coldly. Seemed like she wanted him to read until he died. Luyin glanced at her. Thank you. Chapter 1355. There were more than a dozen cultivators guarding the library, and one of them was a hunter. When he saw Luyin arrive, he opened the door without saying a word. Luyin entered the library on his own. The entire library was dozens of stories high, and it was like a city. There were hundreds of millions of books scattered about, and there were even people who were responsible for organizing them. Aside from Luyin and the people who were organizing the library, there were also a few scattered people reading something. Luyin looked around and casually found a book that was closest to him. He casually flipped through it. On one of the peaks of White Mountain, Long Kue retracted his gaze when he saw the book Luyin was reading. It was a very ordinary biography, and he shook his head. Luyin was not looking for cultivation books after entering the library. Instead, he was reading biographies. It was a pity that the princess did not have a good life. Luyin did not know that Long Kue was monitoring him, but he did not need to know either. He could guess that someone was monitoring him. He did not immediately search for books that introduced this region of space, but instead read biographies. This was because these biographies would definitely introduce this region of space. Gradually, Luyin began to understand this region of space. He learned that this region of space was called the Astral Tree Domain, and he also learned that in the distance, there was an incomparably large tree that blocked his line of sight like a wall. Everyone called it the Mother Tree. This entire region of space, including the Middle Realm and the Peak Realm, had been pulled up by the Mother Tree. Beneath its feet was the most dangerous region of space, the Lower Realm. He also learned that each realm was very large. Even though he could see the Mother Tree, that was because it was simply too large, and it was like a heavenly barrier. He could only see the Rainbow Bridge because it ran through 3 realms. It would take a lot of time for an envoy to travel across a realm. According to Luyin's calculations, the top realm, middle realm, and lower realm might not be smaller than the outerverse of the 5th mainland. In fact, they might even be larger. This was because each realm covered the heavens. He knew that the rainbow in the distance was the passageway that connected the 3 realms. He also knew that there was an incomparably huge python in the mortal realm that had coiled around the Mother Tree several times. It was also the ancestral Mang that the White Dragon clan respectfully called. That ancestral Mang was indeed a progenitor realm expert. It had existed since the ancient times when human civilization had been passed down. It coiled around the Mother Tree to survive. Most of the time it was in a deep sleep and would occasionally wake up. Luyin also knew that at the very top of the Mother Tree was the legendary Sovereign Realm, where several progenitors resided. At the same time, there was also an incomparably gigantic divine eagle that lived there. This divine eagle was similar to the ancestral Mang era, and it had also existed since the beginning of human civilization. Most of its time it was in a deep slumber. However, this was treated as a legend, and many ordinary people were unaware of its existence. He knew that this starry sky also measured one's strength based on one's battle prowess, and the number of battle prowess values was no different from that of the 5th mainland. The only difference was that the 5th mainland measured one's battle prowess with a gadget, while this starry sky measured it with a Cloud Connect stone. He also knew that there were many people in this starry sky with the surnames Lu, Wang, Xia, Bai, and Nong. These were all primeval surnames that reigned supreme in this starry sky. At the same time, he also knew that the 4 scales of the top realm were divided into the White Dragon clan, the the frigid immortal sect, the Shenwu Plain and the Wang family. The frigid immortal sect's main family was surnamed Bai, while the Shenwu Plain's main family was surnamed Xia. In the middle realm, there was a seed garden that mainly belonged to the farmer clan, as well as a sword steel that was guarded by the Lu family. However, there was no Lu. There was no Lu and there was no Lu at all. There wasn't even a mention of the surname Lu. Why? They were all primeval surnames, so why wasn't there a Lu surname? Lu Yin flipped through many biographies, but he discovered that there was no Lu surname. It was as if this surname had never existed. It shouldn't have existed. Could it be that the Lu surname didn't exist? Could it be that the Lu surname wasn't a primeval surname? No, the Fifth Mainland recognized the Lu surname as a primeval surname, so why wasn't it here? This was too strange. Lu Yin flipped through the biographies, but he couldn't find any Lu surname. Lu Yin closed the book and fell into deep thought. This starry sky revered the primeval surnames, and the Fifth Mainland was hostile to the primeval surnames. Could it be that this starry sky was the Fifth Mainland's enemy? There were many things that he couldn't figure out, but Lu Yin had no choice but to stop reading. He had read many books and this did not match his rather lazy personality. The more he discovered something strange, the more he didn't dare to be careless. In his opinion, this starry sky was far more dangerous than the Fifth and Sixth Mainlands combined. This was because there were an unknown number of progenitors here and there were also many powerhouses below the progenitor realm. This starry sky was rather dangerous. He was now curious about the ancestral Mang. How big was it? How many times could it wrap around the mother tree? Didn't that mean that the ancestral Mang was long enough to pierce through the outerverse 72 weaves? It was unimaginable. Lu Yin felt a little dizzy and he shook his head before walking out of the library. Just as he was about to leave, the hunter guard raised his spear to block him. Go back. Lu Yin frowned. What do you mean? The guard's tone was stiff. Before Miss Xiaoqian left, she instructed that you should not leave the library. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. Is this an order from Princess Longxi? The guard did not reply. Lu Yin was furious as he did not want to appear like Zhang Yang, but he also could not allow a guard to bully him like this. If he went too far, then he would not be able to do so. If he appeared too weak, then it would be easy for him to arouse suspicion. As he thought about it, he grabbed the spear and used 150 stacks in his palm. Although the guard was a white dragon cultivator, he was not a member of the white dragon tribe. He was just an ordinary cultivator who had been recruited by the white dragon tribe. How could an ordinary hunter resist Lu Yin's 150 stacks? Lan Si had relied on 150 stacks to stabilize his position as one of the 10 arbiters, and even an enlighter with a power level of over 200,000 was not his opponent. At that time, Lan Si had been able to deal with an enlighter with a power level of over 300,000 with his bare hands. The spear trembled as 150 stacks traveled along the spear and forced the guard back. Even the hand that had been holding the spear was injured and his wrist was twisted. He helplessly let go of the spear and looked at Lu Yin in shock. Lu Yin grabbed the spear and pushed it forward with one hand. The spear spun in the void and a fierce force swept out in all directions, causing the surrounding cultivators to spit out blood and retreat. The hunter hurriedly tried to grab the spear, but Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He casually waved his hand, and an enormous force sent the hunter flying 1,000 meters away. He crashed heavily onto the ground and the spear fell to the ground at the same time. Everything had happened in an instant and no one in the library could react in time. The surrounding guards were shaken and they all looked at Lu Yin in shock. They had never thought that the rumored weak son-in-law would have such a powerful side to him. This strength should be enough to challenge an enlighter. Who had said that the son-in-law was trash? Lu Yin clasped his hands behind his back and walked out of the library. He glanced at the hunter in the distance. Can I come out now? The hunter was terrified and he stood up with blood at the corner of his mouth. He hurriedly half-knelt. This lowly one was reckless. Thank you for your mercy, son-in-law. Thank you for your mercy, son-in-law. The surrounding cultivators bowed in unison. Within the library, many people looked outside. They saw Lu Yin's back, but no one dared to say anything. It seemed like this son-in-law, who had buried his head in books, had an unyielding side to him. In the distance, Long Kuei's cold expression softened a little. At least there was still some vigor left and the difference in strength could be made up for. However, if there wasn't even any vigor left, then the princess's life would not be good. At this moment Xiao Qian arrived and looked at the kneeling guard in shock. Son-in-law, what happened? Lu Yin looked at her coldly. Were you the one who forbade me from leaving the library? Xiao Qian shook her head. I only told you to wait for me if you wanted to leave. I didn't forbid you from leaving. At this point Xiao Qian understood and she coldly glanced at the surrounding guards. During this period of time many people in White Mountain had been secretly mocking this son-in-law, saying that he was weak and incompetent, and that he would only be able to lower his head for the rest of his life. It seemed like it was no longer as simple as just mocking him, and it had even escalated to the point that someone was behind this. At the same time she was also rather surprised. She had also thought that this son-in-law was weak and easy to bully, but she had not expected him to have such an unyielding side. Son-in-law, Xiao Qian will report this matter to the princess and let her handle it, Xiao Qian said, her tone much better than before. Lu Yin nodded. Son-in-law, please come with Xiao Qian. The princess invites you and the junior ancestor wishes to meet you, Xiao Qian said. Lu Yin raised a brow. Junior ancestor was a title that he now understood. It specifically referred to a few youths who were recognized throughout the cosmic tree as having the potential to reach the progenitor realm. They were supported by the greatest resources in the cosmic tree realm, and they were known as junior ancestors. The one who coveted Long Shi was the frozen immortal sex junior ancestor by Xiaohong. The White Dragon clan also had a junior ancestor named Long Tian who was Long Shi's brother. Now Lu Yin's brother-in-law had appeared. In the cosmic tree realm the mother tree also had an age. Just like how ordinary trees were determined by their growth rings, the mother tree also had growth rings. However, they were not determined by years but rather by epochs. Each epoch was equivalent to an additional year which was known as the origin wheel. That day was known as the origin wheel ceremony, as the entire cosmic tree realm would decide on a candidate for the position of junior ancestor. The position of junior ancestor wasn't held every year, or even every 100,000 or 10,000 years. Instead, it had to be determined through the origin wheel ceremony. The specific reason for the origin wheel ceremony was not recorded in the books, but it might have something to do with the mother tree. Becoming a junior ancestor would give one unimaginable resources. This generation's origin wheel ceremony had ended long ago, and Lu Yin could not compete for it even if he wanted to. Not long after, Lu Yin saw Long Shi and a young man in front of her. He was handsome and his facial features resembled those of Long Shi's. The man had clearly just gone through a battle. His clothes were tattered and there were a few injuries on his body. However, this was only an image and not the man himself. Lu Yin could not determine the man's strength through this image. He subconsciously glanced at Long Shi's wrist. The 5th and 6th mainlands should have had gadgets, but here it was just a flat, round stone that looked very ordinary. He had noticed it before and from the biographies he had read, he knew that it was called a cloud stone. It was similar to a gadget but it was more convenient. It did not require a network and it ignored distance. It could be used to communicate regardless of distance and it could even measure one's power level. It was a specialty of the cosmic tree realm, but Lu Yin did not know where it was produced. Possible he wanted to bring some back to the 5th mainland. Chapter 1356. The moment Lu Yin arrived, the man's gaze never left him. He was the White Dragon clan's junior ancestor, one of the 4 junior ancestors chosen by the astral wheel of the Tree of Stars, Long Tian. Greetings, elder brother. Lu Yin bowed respectfully as this was an important person. Long Tian sized Lu Yin up, his gaze calm and his expression unperturbed. His tone was so stiff that it made Lu Yin uncomfortable. Call me junior ancestor. Long Shi couldn't help but say, elder brother, he's my husband. Long Tian frowned and looked at her. A piece of trash has no right to call me that. Long Shi's gaze turned cold. Am I trash in elder brother's eyes? He's just a substitute to help you block by Xiaohong. As long as I have time I can find many people like him, Long Tian said coldly. But before he appeared, elder brother didn't say anything. Bai Xiaohong even used the commoners to massacre our White Dragon clan's branches, but elder brother didn't say anything. Long Tian sighed. I'm cultivating. You know that I don't care about these things. Long Shi stared at him. Since that's the case, don't worry about it in the future. He won't call you elder brother in the future because you won't meet again. I believe that elder brother also believes that he doesn't have the right to meet you. Long Tian growled, Little Shi, you're becoming more and more presumptuous. Long Shi looked up. Elder brother, please show some respect to my husband. Your attitude will determine the White Dragon clan's attitude. I don't want him to live in ridicule and oppression. Lu Yin looked at Long Shi's back and felt inexplicably moved. Even though he knew that Long Shi would protect anyone standing here, she had truly protected him. He had rarely been protected by a woman like this, and it made him feel very comfortable. Long Tian and Long Shi looked at each other for a moment, and then Long Tian said helplessly, "All right, he can call me elder brother. I'll order the clan members not to be rude to him." "Elder brother, is there anything else?" Long Shi asked. Long Tian said seriously, "You know that the four of us are going to explore the sovereign realm soon. This is a reward for the junior ancestors. Every junior ancestor can bring a few people with him. I hope that you can come with me." Long Shi was astonished. Based on past practice, it's rare for the junior ancestor to bring someone from the same clan when exploring the sovereign realm. Exploring the ruler's realm is extremely important, and there are too many ancient relics there. The stronger the people who are exploring the ruler's realm together, the better. At a time like this, we can't care about our fellow clansmen. Furthermore, after the previous origin cycle ceremonies, there are often stowaways from the abandoned lands that sneak into the ruler's realm. Those stowaways aren't weak, so I need someone absolutely reliable to help me. Your strength is enough, Long Tian said. Lu Yin heard it. Abandoned land? Stowaways. Long Shi pondered. Long Tian continued. In the past, during the origin alchemy ceremony, the junior ancestor suppressed his fellow clansmen too fiercely. His clansmen were quite weak, and most of their fate was taken by the junior ancestor, which was why they couldn't travel together. However, there are quite a few decent elites in this generation, and you're one of them. The Wang clan and Shenwu Heaven both have experts, so there shouldn't be any stowaways from the abandoned lands. Our competition is the most intense, so I hope you can help me. At the very least, I won't have to worry about being ambushed from behind. Long Shi said, "Aren't you close to Bai Shaohong? Why are you afraid of being ambushed?" Long Tian frowned. What happened with Bai Shaohong was Big Brother's fault. The things that the ruler's realm can obtain are too important, and there's even a chance of obtaining an ancestor's inheritance. Think about how terrifying those ancestors are, and they're far more powerful than progenitors born in recent times. Even in our eyes, those ancestors can be considered gods. If we can obtain an ancestor's inheritance, our White Dragon clan will definitely rise to prominence and surpass the frigid Immortal sect. Long Shi's eyes flashed. "All right, but I have a condition." "What is it?" Long Tian demanded. Long Shi looked at Lu Yin and then said to Long Tian, "I want you to arrange for him to enter the humble class and give him a way out." Long Tian raised his brows. "Are you afraid that if he dies in the ruler's realm no one will take care of him?" Long Shi fell silent. Long Tian was put in a difficult position. "I don't have the final say in the humble class. You should know that it has its own management system and there's even an ancestor behind it. That's why I want you to find a way to send him in. Once he enters the humble class, no one will be able to make things difficult for him." Long Tian had no choice but to grit his teeth. "Fine." He then looked deeply at Lu Yin. "Cultivate as much as you can. Although the humble class is a good place to eat and wait for death, if you're discovered, your fate will be miserable." He then disappeared. Long Shi exhaled, and Lu Yin realized that her fists had been tightly clenched the entire time. Only now did she slowly relax them. What did that mean? She would only react this way to an enemy. Wasn't that her big brother? Once you enter the humble class, know your place. Before we go to the ruler's realm, I'll do my best to help you make contributions. Then you leave the humble class. That way you'll have the status of a retired humble class member, and no one will dare to touch you. This is my compensation to you. It's best if I can come back alive, but if I can't, Long Shi looked at Lu Yin and said seriously, "Leave the White Dragon clan and live a low-key life. Never go to the top realm." Lu Yin pursed his lips. What a serious atmosphere. Why should I leave the humble class? Long Shi's eyes narrowed. You don't really think that the humble class is a place for the rich and powerful, do you? People like that die every year. The humble class is independent of the four cardinal scales and has a progenitor backing it. Countless traitors are captured and killed every year, and it's all thanks to the humble class. Most of the rumors in the outside world can't be trusted, So don't even think about living in the humble class. It seemed that this so-called humble school was similar to the Interstellar Arbitration Institute of the Hall of Honor, but it was much more powerful than the Interstellar Arbitration Institute. They had a progenitor backing them, but why were there so many progenitors in this region? The White Dragon clan had 3 steps to a marriage, and as the princess of the White Dragon clan, Xianxia had a noble status. Even if everyone knew that her marriage was to deal with the frigid Immortal sect, it was still a marriage. This was a fact and many people came to congratulate her. However, most people could not see Xianxia. On this day, Xian was reading in the library when Zhou Xian arrived and asked him to accompany Xianxia to receive an important guest. Xian was shocked and he guessed that it was one of the 4 cardinal scales. Otherwise, who would be worthy of Xianxia's attention? However, that did not seem right. The cardinal scales congratulations should be the last step, and Xian would have to follow Xianxia to the top realm to officially add his name to the White Dragon clan's main bloodline. Only then would the cardinal scales congratulate him, but it was still too early. Before they even reached the guest hall, Xian could hear Xianxia's cheerful voice and a man's laughter. Xian was unhappy. Although he was not actually married to Xianxia, his wife was smiling so happily in front of other men, but she was so serious in front of him. Anyone would be angry. Xian walked into the guest hall and glanced around, and his attention was immediately attracted by a man. What a weirdo. Xian had seen many people in his life. Beautiful, ugly, handsome and pretentious. There were even people like Zhou Xian who were ridiculously handsome, but he had never seen someone like this. It was not that there was anything wrong with the man's appearance, but with his attire, was he really not here to farm? When he saw Xian walk in, the man stood up and smiled brightly. I'm Xianxia. You must be Xianxia. Xian nodded in a daze and blinked. This man called Xianxia was dressed simply, and the material of his clothes looked very ordinary. It was even worse than some ordinary merchants. His hands were full of calluses, but they were not from cultivation. They looked more like calluses from farming. His head was wrapped in a white cloth and more importantly his trousers were rolled up. There was mud on the soles of his feet. Xian was stunned. This was his first time seeing someone like this. How should he describe it? He was down to earth, yes, down to earth. He's greeting you. Xianxia's dissatisfied voice traveled to Xian's ears. Xian reacted and smiled. I'm Xianxia. Nice to meet you, brother Xianxia. Xianxia's eyes lit up. Brother Xianxia, you're from a branch of Mount Lian, so you must be living a good life. I've heard that wild beasts run rampant there. Are you farming at home? Xian choked. Farming? What an unfamiliar term. Brother Lai, let's sit down and talk, Xianxia said. Xianxia slapped his head. Look at me, I feel like old friends with brother Xianxia. Come, sit down, brother Xianxia. Xian nodded speechless. Whose house was this? And since when did they feel like old friends? He'd never farmed before. But he'd destroyed a lot of it. Brother Lai, it's rare for you to have time to come out. I wonder how Sanyang is doing? Xianxia asked. Xian's eyes twitched. Sanyang was a nice name. Xianxia replied, my sister is still farming. When brother Xianxia's name is engraved into the White Dragon clan's main bloodline, she'll definitely go and congratulate you. Xianxia nodded. It's been a few years since we last met. I really miss Sanyang. Ah, little princess, now that you're in the Central Realm, you should visit the Seed Garden when you have time. Sanyang misses you as well, and it's not that she doesn't want to come. You know the reason. Xianxia nodded and didn't say anything else. Xianxia's gaze shifted to Xian. Brother Xianxia, what hobbies do you have? Xian was puzzled. This guy was being too friendly. Studying. Xianxia's eyes lit up. Studying? That's so elegant. I thought you'd be cultivating all year round, but that's boring. You might as well farm. Of course, studying isn't that bad either, huh? Xian was really curious about what he meant by farming. Could it be the literal meaning? Brother Xianxia's words make sense. Hearing Xian's agreement, Xianxia's smile grew even wider. At that moment, his rolled-up trousers moved and a palm-sized round creature that looked like a peach jumped out. It had eyes and a mouth and it made soft noises. It was very cute. Little guy, stop messing around. Go back, Xianxia growled. Xian looked on in surprise. What was this? A giant beast? Yi, the little thing cried out and looked at Xian curiously. Xianxia was surprised. You like brother Xianxia? The little thing cried out before jumping towards Lu Yin. Lu Yin subconsciously caught it, but it didn't weigh much. He looked at Nong Lai. What's this? Thanks to you, Chitsao. Only by the wind. Brother's reward, I'll give it to you. Chapter 1357. It's a creature called the pyrolite. It's not very useful, but it can help us find good mountains, water and land for farming, Nong Lai said as he stared deeply at Lu Yin. He then said to the pyrolite, hurry up and come back, little thing. The pyrolite looked at Lu Yin reluctantly and let out a cry. It then jumped onto Nong Lai's pants and hid again, not even caring about the mud there. Long, she said, the seed garden collects strange creatures from outer space. It's like the seed garden of all things, and there are as many creatures as there are stars in the sky. Nong Lai smiled. It's not that exaggerated. It's just some small creatures that are close to farming. The earth is the foundation of life, huh? His expression changed and he looked at Long Shi seriously. Have you heard? The Wang family's second brother is injured. Long Shi was surprised. Wang Yi. Yes. I don't know what happened, but he was severely injured when he came back. He shouldn't appear for the next 10 years, so he needs to be treated. He's not fated for this trip to the sovereign realm. I heard that the entire Wang family is in chaos because of this. That bitch Wang Su is furious, Nong Lai said. Long Shi was indifferent. It has nothing to do with us. Wang Yi isn't weak and he's so fast. Only the junior ancestor can injure him. It's probably someone from the older generation who's targeting the Wang family. Maybe, but I hope it's not me. Nong Lai only likes farming and I don't like to do unnecessary things. The Wang family. While Long Shi and Nong Lai were conversing, Lu Yin's heart was in turmoil. Wang Yi had actually come from this place, one of the 4 cardinal scales of the top realm. It was no wonder why he was so obscure and yet so powerful. If Wang Yi could go to the 5th mainland, then what about the other 3 sides of the 4 scales? Could they go? Wang Yi was representing the technocracy in the sovereign tournament, so did that mean that the technocracy had a passage that connected to this region of space? The technocracy had always been mysterious. From what Lu Yin knew, half of the technocracy's mainframe was controlled by the 6th mainland, and this region of space clearly surpassed the 6th mainland. Did that mean that the other half was controlled by this region of space? It was also possible that the Wang family controlled the other half. Lu Yin suddenly recalled that the 6th mainland had sent people to participate in the tournament of the strongest. There was a woman called Yun who was extremely strong. She couldn't have come from the Wang family, could she? The technocracy was clearly created by the Hui ancestor, so why was it controlled by the 6th mainland and this starry sky? And the 5th mainland was constantly at war with the 5th mainland. He couldn't figure it out. He couldn't figure it out. Nong Lai came to congratulate them and then left. Before he left behind a congratulatory gift. Lu Yin didn't receive them as long she had kept them all. Don't underestimate the farmer's school. It's not much worse than the 4 cardinal scales, Long she said to Lu Yin and told him to continue reading. Lu Yin wasn't interested in reading any more books as he already knew quite a bit about this region of space, and he wouldn't be able to glean any more secrets from them. Zhou Xian had been sent away by Long Shi to sort out the gifts, and Lu Yin was bored as he wandered to one mountain peak after another. According to Long Shi, every mountain peak was equivalent to a world. He could play around as much as he wanted. There were countries, wars, and other civilizations in those places. Lu Yin was not interested in such things. The 5th mainland's 72 weaves in the outer verse were all under his rule, so what kind of civilization had he not seen before? Once a man has gone to a high place, he cannot go back to a low one unless he is beaten. The attack came. Lu Yin looked up and saw the envoy-level beast Elder Long Kuei's mount. When the beast saw Lu Yin, it sneezed. Although it was just a sneeze, it was enough to change the weather for Lu Yin. He hurriedly dodged and narrowly avoided being swept by the sneeze. The beast's 2 heads and 4 large eyes stared at Lu Yin with interest. It sneezed again, but the range was not large. Lu Yin still managed to avoid it by a hair's breadth. He looked up sullenly. This beast was doing this on purpose. The beast's interest grew and Lu Yin couldn't understand it. It was clearly an envoy-level beast, but its temperament was like a child's. Lu Yin couldn't escape even if he wanted to, as the beast easily blocked his path. If not for the White Dragon tribe, Lu Yin would have used the walnut power vessel to attack it. Evil creature, back off. Long Kuei appeared, his loud voice echoing throughout the mountain peak and causing Lu Yin's head to hurt. The beast felt wronged and let out a low cry. It glanced at Lu Yin with some reluctance before flying away. Elder Long Kue stood high up in the sky and looked down at Lu Yin. Go read your book and don't run around. There are some places where your life is in danger, and I don't want my White Dragon clan's son-in-law to die in our own territory. It would be a disgrace if word got out. He then left. Lu Yin had never been looked down upon like this before, and he had been treated with disdain all this time. One day he would find a junior ancestor to fight. A few days later, another important person came to visit and congratulate him. This time it was someone from Shenwu Plain's Xia family. Since the Xia family had come, Lu Yin and Long Shi naturally had to receive them together. This time they didn't receive them in the guest hall, but rather on the grass outside. The Xia family's gift was rather special. It was a 3-meter-long spear that was silvery white in color and had dragon scale carvings. There were dark red lines between the scales that flowed like blood vessels. The spear stabbed into the ground and emitted a sharp aura that prevented the clouds from gathering. Lu Yin could see it from afar. It was clearly only 3 meters long, but it seemed to support the heavens and earth. What a great spear, what a peerless weapon. Long Shi stared at the spear with a burning gaze. This spear was called Dragon Blood, and it had been made by the White Dragon tribe's ancestor by soaking it in the blood of the tribe's ancestors. It was made from the heaviest metal in the cosmic tree realm, and it was as heavy as a mountain peak or a planet. Even an enlighter wouldn't be able to lift it. More importantly, even if one had the strength, they would still have to endure the pressure that came from a progenitor. During an ancient battle, this spear had been lost, but it had been found by Shenwu Plain and given as a gift. Long Shi hadn't expected Shenwu Plain to be so generous as to give him the Dragon Blood spear as a gift. Not too far away, the group from Shenwu Plain was calm and there was a young girl in the middle. Her face was delicate and cute and she had a slight smile on her face. She seemed to be looking at Long Shi with pride. She wore a green dress and exquisite boots and she tapped her toes from time to time. Lu Yin arrived and everyone looked over. Long Shi looked at Lu Yin with a complicated expression. He felt a little helpless but also a little hopeful. This expression was worth thinking about, especially since there had been so many people causing trouble for him recently. Could it be that they were here to cause trouble for him as well? This is Shenwu Plain's prime genius, Xia Taili. She's the younger sister of Shenfei, Long Shi introduced. He then looked at Xia Taili. That's Long 7. Xia Taili looked at Long 7 and smiled. She was very cute and her eyes flickered with a hint of craftiness. Hello, brother-in-law. Brother-in-law? Lu Yin was stunned but then he smiled. Hello. Xia Taili smiled happily. Rumor has it that your martial prowess is unparalleled and that you've conquered the princess of our White Dragon clan. Can I take a look? She then pointed at the spear. That spear is called Dragon Blood and it's a wedding gift for you. Please take it. Long Shi didn't understand. Dragon Blood? Not Dragon Blood? Xia Taili stuck out her tongue. You've misunderstood, sister. This is a spear made from dragon blood. A senior from Shenwu Plain saw the dragon blood spear with his own eyes and was envious, so he made a replica. Although it's not as powerful as the dragon blood spear, it's very suitable for the White Dragon clan. Long Shi was disappointed, but her gaze deepened. Even she thought that this spear was made from real dragon blood, so a replica couldn't possibly be that authentic. There was only one reason why it could pass off as the real thing. This spear had come into contact with real dragon blood. The dragon blood spear was definitely in Shenwu Plain. Xia Taili looked at Lu Yin and smiled brilliantly. What do you think, brother-in-law? Let me see it for myself. Lu Yin raised a brow. Why was everyone causing trouble for him now? Was Bai Xiaohong's influence that great? He looked at Long Shi. Long Shi frowned and said to Xia Taili, Long Qi was injured and hasn't recovered yet. Let's talk about it later. Xia Taili's expression changed and she looked at Long Shi pitifully. Princess, it's been so long. With the White Dragon clan's medical abilities, brother-in-law should have recovered by now. This gift was specially made for you and if you don't take it I won't be able to report back. Long Shi's expression turned ugly. When did Shenwu Plain become so close to the frigid Immortal sect? They're actually helping him. Xia Taili rolled her eyes. Don't misunderstand, sister. This has nothing to do with Bai Xiaohong. It's just that my brother has always admired you and now that you're getting married, I naturally have to give you a congratulatory gift as your sister. Lu Yin couldn't help but look at Long Shi. His wife in name was quite charming and everyone wanted her. She had quite a few love rivals. Long Shi frowned. We don't want this gift. Xia Tyli raised her brows. That's not necessary, sister. It's just a gift. Are you worried that brother-in-law won't be able to pick it up? I forget it. She then took out a sword and stabbed it into the ground. She looked at Lu Yin and smiled. Brother-in-law, can you pick up this sword? It's very light. Long Shi was furious. You. Lu Yin suddenly walked out and smiled at Long Shi. He then looked at Xia Tyli. Your brother is Shenwu Plain's junior ancestor Xia Shenfei? Xia Tyli nodded with a proud expression. Lu Yin shrugged and smiled. The junior ancestor isn't that great. The woman he likes is my wife. The moment he said this, the entire room fell silent. Long Shi was stunned. Xia Tyli stared at Lu Yin in a daze. What did you say? Lu Yin smiled. I won't repeat myself. He then raised his hand and grabbed the fake dragon blood. With a low grunt, the earth trembled as a blinding white light tore through the sky and shot up into space. Lu Yin pulled out the fake dragon blood and brandished it twice before suddenly thrusting the spear towards Xia Tyli. The Xia family members shouted, How dare you? How dare you?